across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Well, it may be a quieter morning than we had yesterday, that's for sure. But goodness me, what a 24 hours we have had. Can't wait to get into all of our guests today. Can't wait to talk with you. Can't wait to get your calls on air about what the flipping heck just happened in this country. Question really simple for you today. Keir Starmer has told Labour MPs that he is not prepared to walk away. Apparently he was absolutely brilliant. Standing ovations, banging of the desk, cheers. Some 400 MPs crowded into a committee room to see him sort of basically say, you know, he's got a 5-year mandate and he's fighting on, and you know, the gentleman's not for turning and all that nonsense. But we all know he's on borrowed time. We all know an awful lot of his MPs want him to go. We all know that most of the voters want him to go. We all know that a lot of his cabinet ministers are plotting. So will the Prime Minister survive till the end of the year? That's the question for you, because bearing in mind, there ain't any good news to come. I mean, Gorton-Barton by-election, no one thinks that's going to go very well. That's in 2 weeks' time. And then, of course, we've got the local elections in May in England, and we've got the Welsh Senate elections, Scottish Parliament elections. No one thinks those are going to go well for Labour. So when's the good news are coming? Are we just delaying the inevitable? Or is it just that those leadership contenders, those plotters, just aren't quite ready yet? And that's why it didn't happen, as perhaps Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader who came out at 2:30 and basically said the Prime Minister has to go, was hoping. Anyway, we'll be discussing all of that, including those public endorsements of the Prime Minister by his cabinet. Plus, we're going to talk about the royals in all of this, because this all comes back to Epstein, doesn't it? And King Charles says he stands ready to support any police probe into his disgraced brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Should he be getting credit for bare minimum? Was there a cover-up for many years at the palace? And was King Charles, when he was the Prince of Wales, fighting against it, or was he part of that cover-up? Well, questions need to be asked. Oh, yeah, and Nigel Farage, the former UK leader, reckons that there's going to be a general election as early as this year. Really? A Labour MP is going to vote for that? That's all coming up. Loads to talk about. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, great to have your company. It'd be great, even better, if you call in and answer the question about Keir Starmer. Will the PM survive till the end of the year? Your thoughts, very welcome. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. And don't forget, of course, calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say joining me today, as often, nearly always on a Tuesday, is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Morning.
Morning.
Well, what a rip-roaring 24 hours that was. I mean, it really was like, okay. Morgan McSweeney, the director of the Chief of Staff of the Prime Minister, he resigned on Sunday afternoon. On Monday morning, we had Tim Allen go, his Director of Strategic Communications. I think we were all surprised to learn that there was someone directing strategic communications in Number 10, but 'twas he. Talk that the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Wormald, that he's going to be out within days, could have his departure announced formally at any point today. And then we had news that Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, who was looking at winning the Scottish Parliament elections about a year ago, and now looking at coming third behind the SNP and Reform, he basically got on his feet, told the Prime Minister in advance, I'm going to be calling for your resignation. And then the ring round started. Every cabinet minister within about 45 minutes had messaged their full support of the Prime Minister, clearly being dictated to on the phone, including even non-cabinet ministers like Angela Rayner. One person who's studiously absent from this was Andy Burnham, the King of the North, Manchester Mayor. Then the pointing of the fingers, front pages, all about, was it Wes Streeting? Was he the man plotting? Had he been the one who told Anna Sarwar to go? Angela Rayner's leadership website appearing briefly online. What is going on? And is the Prime Minister today stronger or weaker, as he chairs his first cabinet minister since then, than he was yesterday?
Well, he's stronger, but only because the people around him are almost as weak as he is. I mean, this is such an unpopular Prime Minister, this is such a disastrous Prime Minister, and it's now a Prime Minister who can't really command the support of a majority in the House of Commons. But because the Cabinet don't really know what to do, they haven't coalesced around one particular candidate, and also because a lot of the candidates aren't nearly as strong as they like to think they are, as well as a lot of people in the media like to think they are, they haven't been able to move. Hence you had Anna Sarwar's kind of completely abortive coup attempt yesterday, which didn't come to very much at all. So the only positive for Keir Starmer is a negative, which is that he's woeful, he's on the way out, it is only a matter of time. He's
in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Exactly.
I mean, basically, he's hopeless and useless and everyone knows it. But the people who want to oust him are also hopeless and useless.
Quite, yeah, and that's why we're in this holding pattern, but it can only last, you know, can it outlast a bad Gorton and Denton by-election result for them? Maybe not, but certainly at the end of the May elections, on the other end of that. I think that's also part of the calculation here, is who wants to grab that poison chalice at this point.
Right, this is the thing, right at this moment. But also, crucially, how ready are people? Because if you look at it, Angela Rayner, again... She's got her head up. Again, you're not an influencer in Dubai. Please try and be a grown-up. It's just embarrassing. But Angela Rayner, a website for Angela for Leader, a nice polished website, briefly appeared as just very briefly now, accidentally on purpose. Who knows? Everyone knows she's gunning for the leadership. I mean, genuinely, if the Labour Party want to elect Angela Rayner as the leader of their party, fill your boots, guys. Again, it's going to be a rip-roaring ride. It really is. I mean, she's still waiting for the HMRC to finish their investigation over her unpaid tax, so she's got scandal all around her. And again, the Epstein thing is kind of an over-there thing for a lot of people. I mean, it's disgusting and awful in every way, but there's an element where everyone has to pay their taxes. How absolutely flipping furious people are when people are struggling financially to, they're having a baby. I like when my husband and I, we were having a baby, and we had a one-bedroom flat. In the second floor, we had to buy somewhere new. That point when you're paying your stamp duty, when you're trying to get to a bigger home, just because you're growing your family, or that is such a big pull on people. And the fact that she didn't pay her full stamp duty under the laws when she was actually Deputy Prime Minister and the Housing Secretary, when she imposed this rule on second homes. Sorry, that does not sit well with a lot of people. But she's not ready. She needs that ruling that she didn't do anything wrong. Which, who knows, will it come or not? We've got Wes Streeting, he put out all his messages with Peter Mandelson. Not particularly damning. He's criticised the Prime Minister, the direction of the country in them. I have to say, I think a very good decision by him. Yeah, I was matey with him. They're not particularly worrying. The only thing that worries me is he genuinely thinks that Israel's committed war crimes in Gaza, which makes him an idiot. And so if you're going to believe Hamas's lies, then I'm really worried about you being Prime Minister, frankly. But other than that, you think, look at who else? I mean, Andy Burnham, not an MP yet. No. So he's not ready. I'd say the only two people who are ready, David Lammy, utterly delusional, God bless him, Ed Miliband, who's been out on manoeuvres today and insisting categorically he's not running, he will not run. He will definitely run.
It certainly seems that way. And the fact that we're even discussing Ed Miliband becoming Labour leader
again,
despite how it went last time round, despite the bacon sandwich, despite the headstone, despite what an embarrassing moment for this once serious party. Even that I think, tells you everything you need to know about what the Labour Party is about. It did manage to win that last election off the back of a lot of demoralisation and the collapse of the Tory party.
The Tories lost that election. Labour didn't win it.
But what we're seeing now is very clearly the fact that for the same reason that Keir Starmer could become Labour leader is the same reason that maybe Ed Miliband could become Labour leader again. It's because it's a busted flush. It has no intellectual energy, no political energy whatsoever. The front benches are incredibly thin in terms of talent, and so it is just a kind of proverbial group of baldies squabbling over a comb.
And we know who the Labour backbenchers are going to want. Fundamentally, they are going to want to have a lefty, and all of those candidates are on the left. Perhaps not so much Wes Streeting, but it doesn't matter whether Wes Streeting's on the left or the right. No Labour Prime Minister with this lot of backbenchers can get anything done that needs to be done in the country unless they've got the support of the Labour backbenchers. They made it very clear, they will oust as soon as they choose to. So it does. Same in tray, same economic woes, same international issues, still dealing with Donald Trump and his, idiosyncrasies, and you've still got the same backbenchers. I don't know what changes, other than the fact that the lights will go out if Ed Miliband is in charge. Andy Burnham as well. Well, in fact, I mean, basically start taking your money abroad now. If Ed Miliband or Andy Burnham become leader, the markets, the bond markets will just go absolutely loopy. And if people go, well, we don't care about the bond markets, that's fine. You can not care about it as much as you want. But when government borrowing is at the level, 110 billion that we actually pay in interest alone right now, when the interest rates go up, we pay a lot more, and that means either your taxes have to go up because we haven't got enough billionaires to do all the taxing on, and they'll leave anyway if you tax them all, or you have to cut public spending. If you cannot care about the bond markets until it will absolutely affect your day-to-day life.
No, they certainly care about you, is the issue.
Yes,
and I think that was one thing that Andy Burnham really humiliated himself ahead of Labour conference last year when he said, we shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets. You can say that. The point is that you are, and that's because of a series of decisions made by successive governments now have made us even more exposed to those kind of fluctuations in the bond markets than we otherwise would be. So if you want to have a serious plan for trying to ensure that we aren't so indebted, we aren't so exposed, then cool, but that's not what they're talking about. Just kind of posturing against the markets, trying to appeal to a sort of Zach Polanski curious voter. And that's where the Labour Party is headed, not because it has any serious ideas, not because it's come up with a kind of new political economy for this very difficult economic era we find ourselves in, but because it makes them feel good and it gets them retweets. That's basically what governs the Labour Party now, and it has done for some time now.
We are still completely in student politics territory, aren't we? I do think it's fascinating, the Prime Minister, though, so, losing Morgan McSweeney, so it was Morgan McSweeney said it was a bad decision to appoint. It all comes back to appoint Mandelson, big mate, busy mates, best pals with a notorious convicted paedophile. So he's lost Morgan McSweeney on Sunday, lost Tim Allen yesterday, who came back in, who was a former, Blairite advisor. Lots of talk about in Westminster that Tim Allen, he's not got nothing to do with any of this stuff, but that when they have the investigation published into who knew what when and everyone's dealings, everyone in Number 10's dealings with Mandelson, he was very close to Mandelson, worked with him over the years, that there may be some quite rude things about other people in Number 10, including the Prime Minister, in those messages, so best to walk away now. That is the rumour I've been hearing. I have no knowledge whether that is true or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm told we could lose the Cabinet Secretary, so Chris Wormald, also over this Mandelson appointment. He was actually only made Cabinet Secretary 4 days before the Mandelson appointment was made, so hardly a massive part of that decision-making process. But Jonathan Powell, National Security Advisor, still some question marks over him. But it's fascinating, basically the idea is from Number 10 is that the problem is the advisors. Now, they also, what's that old phrase, a bad tool maker blames his tools. So a really rubbish Prime Minister who's the son of a tool maker blaming his advisors as rubbish tools? I don't know. But work on that as you will. But, maybe, Prime Minister, the problem is you.
Exactly. And this is something that was highlighted by the Morgan McSweeney, Peter Mandelson scandal, is that it's not even that Keir Starmer has bad political judgment. He has no political judgment. He does not make political judgments. He takes a very long time to come to a decision. That's apparently why Morgan McSweeney was so useful in Downing Street.
Have this idea that he's some arch strategist?
No, but because he was useful because he would harry the Prime Minister into actually making any decisions. Otherwise, he would just sit on the fence and take his time. And then, similarly with the Mandelson issue, it's well established now in much of the reporting that Keir Starmer didn't particularly like the idea of Mandelson being the ambassador to the US at first. He even favoured George Osborne as a potential candidate.
Not Bear Grylls. Apparently Bear Grylls was on the list.
Bear Grylls.
Still love that. My favourite fact of this whole thing.
What a different world we could have been in. And it was McSweeney who essentially turn him around because of the fact that he doesn't have any judgments in himself, and also the kind of the new Labour apparatchiks coming back into the fold.
But he's brought them in.
Him bringing them in was a function of the fact they didn't know what to do, so he defers to that previous generation constantly.
Exactly. He doesn't know why he's Prime Minister or the point of any ideas. We're going to talk to Carl Turner, Labour MP, who's the one who's threatened to basically resign and hold a by-election over the abolition of jury trials. He's a former, what's got law degree. He's been doing the media rounds today, being very supportive of the Prime Minister, which has been very, very interesting. And there's this whole narrative about the Prime Minister is now unshackled from this Blairite cabal and free to go left. And it's like he appointed them all. He appointed them all because there was no one half decent in the party who else could appoint. I mean, you can imagine also how awkward this cabinet is right now. I mean, just Garibaldi, Mr. Streeting. I mean, come on. Let's talk about another aspect of this, because the King very much involved in this now, because he's got the powers to issue a statement yesterday saying the King and the Queen stand ready to support the police probe into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, his brother, amid claims that now, I mean, not just we've got allegations, there are police investigations looking into allegations about young women being supplied to him, but also that he leaked confidential documents to Epstein while he was the UK trade envoy. He was in that job for 10 years, and in fact he was ousted in 2011 because it would emerge that picture of him in New York with Epstein. It's kind of, this is where it all really exploded. But basically there was already some question marks about Air Miles Andy basically going off to golf courses and beaches and stuff, and using these trips to his personal gain as well, pushing businesses. Lots of stuff that he was looking to set up a business in China with Epstein. By the way, for like 5 years after he was publicly known to be a convicted paedophile, when Andrew had been since saying no, absolutely, to Emily Maitlis, had nothing to do with this guy since then. I mean, basically, there's not a word that comes out of Andrew's mouth that is not a lie, as far as I can tell. But just based on what he has said himself and what we know to be true, assuming these documents are real and genuine. But certainly there is an investigation to not just Lord Mandelson into whether or not he was actually supplying confidential government and financial information to Epstein for his financial gain, and now Andrew as well, bearing in mind that he was working for his own mother's government at the time. We are looking, I mean, Tom Tugendhat yesterday, we're talking about being a traitor, talking about treason at this point. Does the King, though, who got heckled yesterday about what did you know and when, there was booing after that. The booing was for the heckler. But I thought it was a legitimate question. Does the King get credit for this? He has acted very quickly. Yeah. He took away the HRH, took away the Prince, took that. He's shoved him out of his posh home to another posh home on the Sandringham estate. He's going to pay for him, basically, to stop him moving somewhere else and living on life of Riley. He'll just live quietly. That's the idea. I don't think he will live quietly in the Sandringham estate. But here's the thing. Has the King done enough? And do you get brownie points for saying, I'm going to cooperate with the police into a very serious investigation into someone who happens to be a member of my family? Because it's looking very likely that there has been a long-standing, many years, high-level cover-up by the palace, under the Queen, the late Queen, of what Andrew was getting up to, either with his friendship with Epstein and his visits to an island where girls were being trafficked and to another home where girls were being trafficked, but also these confidential documents being leaked.
Well, as you say, it's not clear to me that the King could have moved much quicker. I mean, certainly... Before
he was King, he didn't have the power.
No, exactly. And the reason that Andrew was looked after, to put it lightly, for so long was because of the fact he was the Queen's favourite. She did want to kind of try to keep a lid on this as much as was humanly possible, was clearly infuriated by his attempts to relitigate this in public by the Newsnight interview, and pushed him very much to the margins of royal life, but he wasn't strict of his titles, he wasn't completely absent from the occasions, and that has now changed. I mean, are we expecting King Charles to kind of, put Andrew in the tower himself? It's probably not going to happen. So maybe what we're seeing here is being clear that he's willing to work with the authorities is about as far as it can go. But it does raise very difficult questions of the monarchy, as you say, particularly at a time where, in the absence of the Queen, someone who did command a fair amount of authority and public support, the current occupant of the throne doesn't enjoy that kind of level of public support.
Which is interesting, given the hagiographic treatment he's had from the media. And yes, look, he's he's had the cancer treatment. He's gone, he's gone through a lot in the last year. Got every sympathy on that. And again, the sycophantic royal correspondence, going on about it. But I think what he's done with Andrew, he's acted a lot quicker, let's face it, than the Prime Minister did on the issue, and he was clearly horrified. I don't think there's any question at all that the King would justify or be accepting of what he believes Andrew's got up to. I don't think that is. I don't know the man at all. Unlike the royal correspondent, I don't pretend to. But I mean, I'm not a monarchist, but he doesn't strike me as being that kind of person. Okay, and
there's not much love lost between them either.
No. It's not. Yeah, it's not like his beloved. Yeah, I know he's his brother, but he ain't his beloved brother. That's for sure. But this is all about the firm. As Diana said, this is about the firm. This is about protecting the firm. Andrew's accused of Virginia Giuffre. She was paid off, including money provided by the late Queen, because there was going to be too much damage of Andrew going to the civil case in America, because we could see what the damage being done by Newsnight. That's the reality. That it was worth the money for him to be paid off. The HRH, the dukedom, and the house, that's all been stripped because you're protecting the firm. That's what it's all about. And they will stop at nothing to protect the firm. That's their job. It's the institution. But, I don't like it when people get brownie points for saying, I will cooperate with a police investigation into very serious crimes. Damn sodding right you will. Yeah. Was it? No, but did it need to be said? Is he just stating the obvious? In which case, okay, fair enough. But was there an implication that actually the palace had not previously been or was not planning to cooperate?
And it's not entirely clear that we're even at the end of the beginning of this, where Andrew or Mandelston is concerned. I mean, it's worth remembering that the thing that sparked this latest wave of this scandal was the release of files by the American Department of Justice. Whereas in the UK, it's not often the done thing to point it out. Obviously, there are ways in which the royals are able to stop certain things from coming out. There is still a level of deference which exists. There are still certain connections which can be leaned on, leverage that they can use. They do not have that over the American Department of Justice. There are going to be more materials released at some point.
We haven't seen all of them. No, people haven't gone through all the files, and we haven't seen all the files, and a lot of the files being released are redacted.
Exactly, and that every file that gets released is also going to spur more reporting. People who've been working on the Andrew story for a very long time, looking into what he may or may not have been getting up to when he was trade envoy. We've already seen stories in recent months of, again, quite unseemly, seedy parties taking place in royal residences. All of these things is going to build up and build up and build up. And even though we might stand back and say the king did as much as he could when he was in a position to do something, it's going to really potentially dog the royal family and kind of corrode its level of public support, which was always much more vulnerable in the wake of the Queen passing on, because it was very much invested in the individual, not the institution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do wonder, I would be very surprised if actually the King hadn't, when he was Prince of Wales, been begging the Queen to take action sooner. And again, her favourite son, and didn't do it. Mums have a blind spot often. What can we say? But anyway, lots to talk about, lots of top guests coming. You do not want to miss any of the show, I promise. Crucially, I want to hear from you, 0344 499 1000. What do you make of all of these stories? Is the Prime Minister going to survive till the end of the year? What do you make of what the King said in that statement from Buckingham Palace? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:26 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Tom Slater's still with me, and you are on the phone lines. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. That's what Glyn has done in Nottingham. Glyn, what do you make of all of this, and is Starmer going to survive?
Good morning, Julia.
Morning.
Well, I think with Starmer, there's only two ways you can look at it, really. Either Morgan McSweeney told him to appoint Mandelson, in which case he's a totally weak Prime Minister and he shouldn't be there, or, knowing all the facts, he chose himself to put Mandelson there, in which case his judgment is to pot. And we
Either way,
to pot because of all the ministers he's lost for corruption, for fraud, for homelessness, for, everything's gone because of his decision.
Yeah.
I do think he's going to be there till May, because I don't know that there's anybody who's going to be daft enough to take on the leadership run into the May elections, where apparently they're going to get slaughtered. Yeah,
that's the thing. Even if you're not considered responsible for it, there might be a little bit of a boost in the polls or something, but then you're just going to, you're just going to take the heat for it. Also, it's a very complicated and long-running process for that Labour leadership contest. I don't think they could even get it over by May, in which case, you're trying to run a campaign at the same time as running a leadership campaign. Not sure that would fly. So as far as you're concerned, he lasts till May. If those elections, as everyone, according to the polls, is predicting, they're going to be bad, Scotland, Wales and in English local elections, you think then does he fall on his sword, or do you think there'll be actually another leadership challenge?
I think there'll be a leadership challenge because... he can't stay because, mind you, all these people that are backing him now are basically backing somebody who put the friend of a paedophile in the job. Yeah. So they're all almost condoning what he did.
They're basically saying it's okay. Who would you, like or least not want to take over?
I'm not really up to... I don't know enough about any of them, really. I suppose Wes Streeting would be the least worst option, but, God help us. I mean, he's already too tarred with Peter Mandelson, isn't he?
Yeah, although I read all of the messages. I mean, I don't think they're a worry for him, to be honest. I think he did a very wily thing to get them out there. There they are. Here's all of them. Fill your boots. Great call, Glyn. Thank you very much indeed. I like to say I think Glyn has better political analysis than half the journalists working in the lobby, but there we are. And let's go to Matthew, who's in Warrington. Matthew, what do you reckon?
Well, my birthday's May the 11th. I think he'll be gone before I'm 56. I'll give you a slice of birthday cake.
Oh, I love it. Listen, I'm going to hold you to that. I love a birthday cake.
They whipped them all in yesterday and banged the drum and they gave him a big, powerful speech and they were all, and nearly they're going to walk away. And actually, when the dust settles, he's still wrong and he's still made bad decisions. Nothing's going to change. Yeah.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. Nothing has changed at all. I mean, can you imagine how awkward that cabinet meeting was this morning?
Oh, I bet you could have cut the air with the same cake knife.
I love it, Matthew. And who do you think will be the next leader, and who would you want to be?
Well, I hope it's not someone sensible. So I'm hoping to go for Ed Millipede. So with that, then the banks just stop borrowing us money and we can just have a general election. If they get someone sensible in, it's just going to drag out longer and longer. And there's going to be more infighting, and it's going to be a political no man's land till whenever there's a general election.
So it's got to be really bad so we can get an election and get it over and done with.
Yeah, but I hopefully get Miliband in. The banks will just go, oh my God, no, right, and then the economy will crash, and he's forced into doing a general election.
Yeah, I tell you what though, there's a lot of people who are going to be in a lot of financial difficulty if that happens. People think like, oh, it'll crash, then it'll be fine again. Yeah, there's a lot of jobs that are going to go. People losing their homes. That could be catastrophic for a lot of people. But we shall wait and see. So much to look forward to, eh? Matthew, thank you very much. Great call from you and from Glenn. Glyn, thank you very much, and happy birthday from May, Matthew. I hope I hear from you. I hope that cake gets delivered. 10:31 is the time. Up next, going to talk to someone who thinks that, well, it was absolutely right for the Prime Minister to say that he is not prepared to walk away. He's the Labour MP, Carl Turner. He's up next. Stay tuned for that.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back. 10:33 is the time. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about the future of the Prime Minister with one of his MPs. Carl Turner is Labour MP for Hull East and is among those now saying, no, the Prime Minister is doing a great job. We should keep him. Good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I mean, last time we spoke, I think you were threatening to resign and cause a by-election over the issue of the abolition of jury trials for many crimes. Now the Prime Minister. I've listened to you on various different media interviews this morning. You're the Prime Minister's biggest fan. What changed?
Well, look, Julia, I think it would be incredibly damaging to have the possibility of the fifth Prime Minister. The fifth Prime Minister in the last 5 years. I think it would be damaging. I think the economy would suffer as a result of that, and we need stability. I don't think the electorate would thank us. And actually, he was strong and he was determined, he was apologetic, he was reflective. He was on fire in the Parliamentary Labour Party last night. I still disagree with him on policy. It's not just juries. There's other policy areas that I'm going to have a scrap with him over, no doubt, in the weeks and months ahead. But the reality is, we've got a PM. He's doing a decent job. I know the polls don't reflect that. Please forgive me for suggesting such a thing. But actually, we've got 3 years before an election. Let's get on and govern.
Well, this is the argument has been, isn't it? Look, he was elected. He's got a 5-year mandate. He says, I'm not prepared to walk away. But you say, he was on fire at the meeting with some 400 MPs last night. Well, great. I've never seen him on fire in a press conference or in any meetings with the voters. The reality is, most of you don't think he's up to the job. A lot of his staff apparently don't think he's up to the job. His own cabinet don't think he's up to the job. The polls suggest the voters don't think he's up to the job, including millions of people who voted Labour at the last election. What you're really saying is he's a bit rubbish, but the alternatives are worse.
Well, listen, I think you make a fair point, to a degree. So I texted him immediately after that meeting last night, and I said, look, more of that, please. More of that, but more publicly. If the electorate saw what he was about last night, saw what he was saying to the parliamentary party, his commitment, his passion, his vision, I think there'd be a different thing going on in the polling. I honestly do. He was absolutely outstanding last night.
What did he say that was so different from what he says in public?
Well, he talked about what he was in politics for, his commitment to public service.
I'd love to know. What is he in politics for?
His commitment to public service, his determination.
What does that mean?
The fact is, he's got a proven record for being committed to the job of serving the public. Well, Julia, Keir Starmer was a King's Counsel barrister
Keir Starmer was a very highly paid barrister, and then he was a very highly paid director of public works. I'm not into this whole commitment to public service. Highly paid, highly respected, high status jobs. Oh, gee, thanks, Keir. Hang
on. Let me just finish, please, honestly. It was a very highly paid, incredibly impressive King's Counsel barrister in human rights at the very top of the profession. He could have earned millions and frankly probably was earning fortunes. He gave that up to go to be the Director of Public Prosecution on a salary which I suspect is not much more than the Prime Minister's salary now.
And a gold-plated... Poor Diddums on his six-figure salary. He's on a gold-plated... There's an Act of Parliament to provide him with his gold-plated pension.
It's not just him. There's an Act of Parliament which is about directors of public prosecution.
Wait a second. I'm on a second, Carl. I just want to get my little violin out, because the Prime Minister apparently he had to give it all up. No, he wanted a career in politics. He's got his career in politics. He's risen to the very top of the greasy pole. The thing is, what a lot of people are concerned about is they're not quite sure whether he knows why he wanted to be Prime Minister, because we're told change. The manifesto was all about change in July 24, but change to what? We're not quite sure. The economy's completely hitting the skids. We've got rising unemployment. We've got rising discord in the public. He hasn't stopped the boats. We've got a situation where he's absolutely freestyle falling down in the polls. Why? Because he's making bad decision after bad decision, then U-turn after U-turn. No one really thinks he knows what he is in politics for or what he stands for. You say you now know. So what is it?
I think I always knew, but I was waiting for him to come out of retirement and say it to the public. He needs to do more of that. And what he needs to do, Julia, is consult the Parliamentary Labour Party a bit more than he ever has, really, because the truth is, we wouldn't be U-turning after U-turning after U-turning if, in fact, he was rolling the pitch. If he had me in a room and said, look, this is what we're thinking of doing on juries, I think I've got a fairly strong chance of persuading him that it's a ludicrous idea.
OK, so let me clarify.
So
what you're saying is the Prime Minister is doing badly in the polls because he keeps U-turning, because he keeps making bad decisions, either his own decisions or his advisors, who he appointed, making bad decisions, which he hasn't basically agreed with his backbenchers. And the backbenchers, if he consulted them in advance, would talk him out of it. So what you're saying is he's really rubbish at being Prime Minister.
I think he's been over-reliant on advice. And I think the advice at times has been bad advice.
He appointed the advisors.
Well, he did appoint the advisors.
So doesn't that tell us something about him?
He appointed the advisors, and of course he's the Prime Minister. He doesn't have to take on board every bit of advice that he receives.
But he obviously does.
And that's my point. Well, not always, because I've been trying to give him advice on other things as well as juries.
Well, he's not changed his tune on the juries, has he?
He doesn't necessarily take that advice on board.
The narrative...
What I'm saying is he deserves a chance. He's got a massive majority, Julia, and we need to govern for the benefit of the country.
Okay.
And I'm confident the Prime Minister will do that.
The narrative today has been that, well, he's been beholden to all these Blairite folk brought back in, and actually, if he'd been listening to the backbenchers who are far more on the left, he would be running a much more successful, much more popular government, and things would be going well. So what are the sort of policies that we're looking at that would actually make him more popular? Because it seems to me, and this would be the problem if any Labour Prime Minister with this bunch of backbenchers in, is all the things that need to be done in this country to actually sort out the big problems, whether they're economic, whether they're uncontrolled illegal immigration, whether it's, you can't build anything, you've got all the issues we've got. None of those are going to be solved with a bunch of left-wing backbenchers who won't allow reform of the welfare, who won't allow, help to get businesses back on track by cutting their taxes, who won't allow the human rights laws to be not applied to illegal arrivals in the country. No Prime Minister, Keir Starmer or anyone else, with that bunch of backbenchers can get anything done.
Well, it's not just the left wing of the Labour Party I'm talking about. I'm talking about a government of all of the talents. And there's people on the right of the party, there's people like me on the soft left of the party, there's people on the left of the party, like John McDonnell, who happens to be an incredibly impressive politician, somebody who has good, strong values and good advice, I suspect. So that's what he needs to do. Listen to all of the party, take some of them into government if he thinks they're capable of doing a job. He's the leader, he's the PM, he must choose his ministerial team.
You think he should bring John McDonnell, who was Shadow Chancellor when Corbyn was leader, you think he should bring him back into government?
I didn't say bring him back into government. I said listen to the views of people who are experienced and, frankly, have got an idea of what to do and what the policies ought to be.
But a lot of those ideas are things that were roundly rejected by the public in the 2019 general election.
Well, I think the manifesto of 2017 was a particularly good one, actually. I think the 19 manifesto was a bit
tax the rich people over there. Spend. Brilliant.
The 2019 manifesto was a bit of a pick and mix of it was like being stuck in a sweet shop and not knowing which sweets to pick first. But the 17 manifesto, written by Andrew Fisher, was an excellent piece of work. And if we'd have stuck to some of that in the manifesto in 2024, I think we might have done better than we did. I think we need to implement policy that people desperately need. We're doing that, but we can't talk about what we're doing because people want to talk about getting rid of the Prime Minister.
Well, I mean,
it's a nonsense.
But this isn't. But it's not made up by the media. It's not made up by voters. We know, Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, he got up, made a speech yesterday, warned the Prime Minister that he was going to make a speech calling for him to go, by all accounts. And let's face it, we know how these things work. He was expecting a string of resignations and other people to follow him. That didn't happen. But there was studious silence from Sunday onwards to Monday lunchtime when basically everybody was basically told, make the call, write a tweet and say you support the Prime Minister. What do you make of everyone accusing, apparently, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, of plotting behind the scenes as part of this move to oust the Prime Minister?
I suspect it's not true, if I'm honest. I think that Anas did what he thought he needed to do to persuade the electorate in Scotland to put him into Holyrood. I don't think it'll work. I think it was a mistake, actually. I think it shows that he's disloyal. I don't think the electorate like disloyalty. I think if the electorate thought that I was planning a coup against the Prime Minister, they'd be very cross with me, even if they think the Prime Minister's not doing very well. We're not the Tories. We don't change leader of the party every 15 minutes just because somebody thinks they're doing a bit crap. Let's get a grip of this, for crying out loud.
I mean, Anna Sarwar was looking to, there was a possibility at one point, Labour would be on track to winning Holyrood and winning control of the Scottish Parliament. Now it's looking at Labour, after 19 months of Keir Starmer in power in Westminster, are looking to come third behind the SNP and Reform. I mean, you could argue if he's loyal to his party, if he's loyal to the people he wants to represent, he did the right thing yesterday.
Well, look, I don't think he did the right thing yesterday. I think he probably made a terrible mistake, which will cost him in the election more than he ever thought it would, actually.
Is that
what my honest view is?
I mean, you say Labour Party, we don't change leaders very easily. This actually, in the Labour constitution, it's actually much harder to oust a sitting Labour Prime Minister than it is a sitting Tory Prime Minister under your rules. But isn't the reality that the Cabinet and Labour backbenchers are not saying suddenly, oh, you know what, he's a good bloke, he's doing his best, he's got rid of some dud advisors and everything's going to be fine now. The reality is you've got a load of cabinet ministers who want his job, think they'd be better at the job, a lot of backbenchers who agree, but they're not ready to go yet. You've got Angela Rayner, she needs the HMRC investigation got over with. Wes Streeting released all his messages with Mandelson. He wants that to be in the distance past. Andy Burnham, not even back in Parliament yet. The likes of Lammy and Miliband, maybe they're ready to go, but possibly delusional. But the reality is they're all waiting for the Gorton and Barton by-election, and they're all waiting for the local elections, the Scottish elections and the Welsh elections. And then the Prime Minister is toast.
Well, look, I think he's steadied the ship for now, but the sea is still fairly rough. We get to the by-election result, we'll see what happens. I hope we'll win. It's likely probably that we're going to struggle, but people on the ground tell me that we're doing a lot better than the media.
Right, no more detail on Gorton because we don't want to get into.
But I think we're getting somewhere, really, and I think there's another hurdle for him when we come to May. And if the election results are not brilliant for us, even if they're reasonable for us, I think there'll be people who are very cross about it. But the reality is we've got the leader of the Labour Party, he happens to be the PM. I was in that room yesterday, Julia. Neil Kinnock walks in. I look at Neil Kinnock and I look at the guy and I think that man did everything he could possibly do to get a Labour government into power and didn't achieve it himself. And that man there, Neil Kinnock, he's looking at the actual Prime Minister of this country. We should all be ashamed in the PLP for even contemplating the prospect of ousting the leader of the party who happens to be the Prime Minister with a mandate. If Keir Starmer fell on his soda week on Tuesday, you'd have me on the programme the next morning saying, well, it's happened, hasn't it? What do we do now? When's the general election?
Well, that's what Labour asked of the Tories. Now, actually, I'm with you, and I've been very, very clear. There is no constitutional requirement for there to be a general election. I'm very clear about that. But Labour, you'd be hoist by your own petard, wouldn't you, by saying, oh, you haven't got a mandate. The mandate, is, as you know, is for the party.
It doesn't take the pressure off, Julia. The reality is the media will be asking. Rayner said there's got to be an election. Yeah. Probably Carl Turner said there's got to be an election. Probably people who I've never met in my life before said there's got to be a general election, who are now in the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Listen,
so the problem is there.
the reality is you've got a dud leader, but you've got a load of dud people who can possibly take over. You think that's not going to actually make things any better, and they're not quite ready yet. And he's been given a stay of execution for a couple of months, and then until the inevitable happens. You know it, I know it, the voters know it. The only person who probably doesn't know it is the Prime Minister.
I disagree. I think the reception he received in the Parliamentary Labour Party last night was actually genuine. I think people are annoyed with Keir Starmer to a degree, but I think people saw what he was capable of and realise we've got a Prime Minister who is determined to govern for the sake of the country. He's going to change people's lives for the better. I can go to the electorate whenever it happens and say, look, this is what we had before and this is what we've got now. What do you think? Will you support us?
Well, good luck with that is all I can say. 10:48 is the time. Great to talk to you. Carl Turner, their Labour MP for Hull East. Coming up, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking to the journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick, who was at that big reform rally yesterday. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. Let's turn our attentions now to, well, another political party, Reform. Michael Crick is a journalist and broadcaster. He's also author of One Party After Another, The Disruptive Life of Nigel Farage. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, you've been following Nigel Farage for many years. A big reform rally yesterday. In fact, our colleague Jeremy Kyle was hosting it for Reform yesterday. Nigel Farage saying basically he thinks that the party needs to be on a war footing. He's expecting a general election this year. How likely do you think that is?
About 0%, I'd say, that there'll be a general election this year. I mean, why should Labour hold a general? It's totally up to the government whether there's a general election. Nobody else has the power to order it unless the King decides to that the monarchy should return to politics after a few hundred years. And why should Labour, in their current dire polling, call a general election? Yeah. Even when you're doing well in the polls, as Theresa May was, you'll recall, in April 2017, 21% ahead of Labour, she called a general election and lost her majority. So, no, Labour will carry on for, at least 4 years and probably the whole 5 years
I mean, that's the thing. There seems to be this idea: if Keir Starmer goes, there's got to be a general election. But yes. There's no mechanism. There's no rationale for Labour MPs to go for that, or for any Prime Minister to go for that. I mean, everyone was shocked when Rishi Sunak, the last Tory Prime Minister, went for election almost a year before he was required to do so, and everyone was horrified by that. He thought he was cunningly tripping up reform before they could grow in numbers. Didn't work out that way.
I know, and actually history shows, there was somebody put it on Twitter yesterday, of the last 25 prime ministers, I think 18 of them have come to office by taking over from somebody else in their party, and only 7 of them came to office in a general election, which is quite in other words, it's sort of quite common for this to happen. And, Churchill took over from Chamberlain famously. Yeah. And then in the 50s, Eden took over from Churchill. Macmillan took over from Eden. Yeah. Hume took over from Macmillan. And Brown took over from Blair. So it's quite common. So there will not be, I mean, that's just, he's just trying to
he's trying to people up. Do you, I mean, You've been following Nigel Farage for a long time. Look, all the talk is, that if there was an election, it's Reform that would win. And one of their big strategies at the moment is about basically preparing to actually, basically, and there's a lot of talk about sort of following on from Donald Trump's second term, not his first term. Well, other than the tax cuts, that was it. He didn't really achieve anything, and certainly nothing lasting. And then looking at him coming and hitting the ground running in his second term this time last year. I mean, goodness knows, we had executive order after executive order every hour, and things changing. Now, is Reform, I mean, you've been following him since, UKIP party, Brexit party, and our Reform party days. Is Reform anywhere close to having, enough candidates, again, vetted candidates, we've had that issue, for all the parties, to be fair, lots of focus on Reform, but also ready for, the personnel that he would need if he's to achieve in government anything resembling what he says he wants to do?
No, and if I were Farage and his colleagues, I would... I mean, you can say there's going to be an election this year. Nobody will believe it. But I would concentrate on the fact that the election won't be until 2028 or 2029. And that then gives Farage and his colleagues time to do all sorts of things. First, start selecting candidates. Now, he actually announced yesterday that was now starting. But they've got to choose 642 candidates with on top of the, I think it's 8 MPs they have now. I lose track. So presumably the 8 MPs don't need it, but 642 candidates, making sure that this time they are properly vetted. And my advice to them would be open in this process, be transparent. Say who is on the shortlist for each constituency, and then journalists like me and you can say, well, actually, I'd be careful about him or her. Remember what they said all those years ago, or that guy defrauded somebody. And it's much better to do it openly, and so that you can actually get rid of your candidate before the election, rather than have the embarrassment.
Well, and again, exactly, let it all come out in advance. What did you make? I mean, the Prime Minister, we're told by one of his MPs, Carl Town, he's been doing the media rounds today, defending the Prime Minister, basically, saying, coming out fighting. And this narrative we're getting from Number 10, which is that the Prime Minister, he's back, he's passionate, he's there, but this fight of his life, because the need to take on reform. And this narrative that is, and it's very similar to what happened in America in terms of the Democrats about Donald Trump and the Republicans, which is that, this is such an existentially bad thing for the country. If reform get in, we've had cabinet ministers referring to them as fascists, as far right and the like, comparing them with Nazis, for goodness sake. How much damage or how much help is that for Nigel Farage and reform?
Well, to see that Labour's in trouble is a huge boost to Farage and Reform. But I think Farage and Reform, as well as choosing their candidates, have got to do what Labour failed to do, which is to sort out what they're going to do in government and the order in which they're going to do it. They've got to think much more strategically. And some governments really do put a lot of thought into it, and others don't. Labour didn't really believe for a long time they'd ever get back. So they put a lot of effort into, they put all their effort really into winning the election and hardly any effort into what we're going to do and how we're going to square everybody. How we're going to deal with this interest group here, this interest group there. Where's the money going to come from? What are the priorities? And Farage needs to do that. Difficult for him because he's never been in government, but he's got a few people around him now who have. And,
I mean, neither of Keir Starmer, though, to be fair. So
no, I know. And he had a few people, but he did have a few people around him who had been in government. The trouble was that the person who was meant to do all of that thinking ahead, Sue Gray, wasn't there long enough in opposition. And turned out that either she wasn't good enough at it wasn't her kind of thing, or she was stymied by this, rivalry with Morgan McSweeney. Maybe it's time for Starmer to bring her back. But so a lot of thought's got to be done into that. And then Farage has got the problem: who are going to be his ministers? And,
well, apparently we're going to be hearing about the shadow cabinet. We're going to be hearing that very soon. So might be quite a lot of noises put out of joint. But again, if you've only got 8 MPs, you haven't got enough for a shadow cabinet. Always good to talk to you.
To appoint all sorts of businessmen that we've never heard of to be shadow ministers.
Well, a lot of people would quite like them. This is the idea, isn't it? The sort of, we hear from some of the Tories, they're the people, they've been in government, they know what they're doing. Well, they were in government a long time. Judging by their election results, not sure they did know what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be cautious about appointing lots of businessmen. Businessmen don't have a good track record, actually, in government or in politics. They think they don't realise how slow politics is and how difficult it is to get decisions made.
But that's why people want them in. I want the guy who organises every delivery, everything organised for Tesco. I want that man or woman, whoever you are, I want you to run the country. You might actually be able to do it better than the civil servants. Really good to talk to you, Michael Crick, journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick there. Quick response from Tom Slater, who's been waiting very patiently.
No, it's just a reminder that there's so much more to do. And also, if nothing else, learn from the horrendous mistakes of this government, which is have a plan, stick to it, and communicate it to the public. So
in advance. Well, you've got to say what you're going to do, so you've got a mandate. That's the mandate for change. For Keir Starmer, change to what? From what? What?
Change from the Tories.
Change. That's all they have. We've got that. Well done, everyone. It's done. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, by the way, she says that basically it's only a matter now of when the Prime Minister goes and not if he goes. He is in office, not in power. All he's been given is a stay of execution, she says. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Lots more top guests to come. We'll be talking more about the King, more about the Prime Minister and his predicament. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. We are fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, or if you're on your smart speaker, you're watching on YouTube, or you're watching on your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. Lots more top guests to come. Lots more we're going to hear from Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online as well. And don't forget, if you've missed anything, go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more on Keir Starmer telling MPs that he's not prepared to walk away from number 10. Apparently amazing passion. Rounds of applause, standing ovations even last night at the Parliamentary Labour Party. I imagine a rather awkward cabinet meeting, which has just finished as well in number 10 today. But the cabinet is publicly endorsing the Prime Minister for now. Well, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, as speaking this morning, has said he's been given a stay of execution because his MPs are terrified of losing their own jobs. It's only a matter now of when he goes, not if he goes. But also, she says, crucially, he's in office, not in power. Ain't that the truth? Plus, we'll be talking about the King. That public statement yesterday from the Palace saying he stands ready to support any police probe into his disgraced brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Two probes, really. One involving his links with the Epstein and him trafficking women, but also over basically handing over confidential government information to Epstein for Epstein's financial benefit. But again, it's a bare minimum, isn't it? Of course you would help the police with any probe of that kind, would you not? If you were anyone, let alone the King. And it was your own government, or your late mother's government, that was actually being, treasonably acted against by your brother. This is the stuff of Shakespearean tragedy, is it not? Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on all of that, but in particular, how long you think the Prime Minister will survive? Will he survive to the end of the year? A lot of people are saying May. That's it. He's gone. After the May local elections, Scottish elections and Welsh elections, he's gone. Do you think he can survive longer? Will there be an election? Will there not be an election? Who do you want to take over? Who do you least not want to take over as PM? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. And you can get in touch with us on X at Talk TV as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. As I say, Tom Slater is still with me, editor of Spiked Online. Tom, I'm not prepared to walk away, says Keir Starmer to his MPs, some 400 of them banging their desks, cheering him on, clapping him, standing up and clapping him yesterday at this meeting in Parliament after 6 o'clock. It's a weekly meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party. We were told by one of the MPs there, Carl Turner, that, he showed his passion and determination and his commitment and his vision. And they were saying, more of that, Prime Minister, on the public stage. I find it highly unlikely that he showed any of those. I've never seen him show any of that, have you? No,
apparently he can only muster it behind closed doors. One of two things happened last night, I think. Either this is all fake and got up and they're trying to rally around the Prime Minister because they want to limit the damage to the party, or for whatever reason Keir Starmer is the only Prime Minister in history who's only capable of rising to the occasion rhetorically when the doors are locked and it's only to Labour MPs. It doesn't make any sense. So I think what's clear is that Labour MPs and even some of the people who are vying to topple him eventually, whether that's Angela Rayner outside the Cabinet or Wes Streeting very much within the Cabinet, is that for now, yes, he's a busted flush, but he's one they've got to stick with. I think there's a sense that things really could get worse, that maybe, and at the same time, that wouldn't it be better to have him carry the can for what could be a bad by-election, what are almost certain to be disastrous local elections, and then have someone pick up the pieces afterwards. Yeah. That's where we are now. Keir Starmer is... No one wants to have that at the start of their term. Could you even run a Labour leadership election? Again, if it was a coronation, if you're in a situation where you don't actually have to have, we had Theresa May in the Tory party after David Cameron stood down after the EU referendum, after he promised he wouldn't do that, by the way. Then you can do it all very quickly. But if you have to have an election, that's a longer process under the Labour constitution. You're looking at fighting these crucial elections in Scotland, and again, we're not talking about just who's collecting the bins. We're talking about who's running Wales, who's running Scotland. These are major elections, you couldn't be running a leadership election at the same time as that. You just couldn't be. Is it just the practicalities? It's partly the practicalities. I think what was being suggested was that there might be some kind of caretaker leader John Healey type, the current Defence Secretary, maybe standing in before between now and the local elections, and then allowing for a proper campaign to take place afterwards. But there's often a lot of talk about caretaker leaders. It often doesn't really come to very much, and I think for the moment,
I don't know how you do that, because the person who is the Prime Minister is the leader of the party that can command a majority in the House of Commons. If you're not the leader, unless it's just like they put in an interim leader, which they did, of course, with Margaret Beckett was an interim leader for the Tories after John Smith died, but they were in opposition then.
No, it seems like this was what was being floated. Presumably there's some sort of mechanism within the arcane Labour rulebook. I will admit I'm not as familiar with the chapter and verse there, but I think in the absence of there being some kind of... because you would need a proper campaign. It would need to go to the members. All of those things would have to be thrashed out. There's not enough time for that. It would also be incredibly damaging. What you're doing that in the run-up to actually asking people for your vote. They don't even know necessarily what kind of party they might be voting for just yet. So we're in a holding pattern. We're in where Theresa May was after she was humbled at the 2017 election, where she's there. She had to get rid of her advisors. Keir Starmer, very similarly, will serve the party for as long as he is needed.
Yeah.
But he's not... I think there is still part of the Prime Minister who thinks that he can revive his domestic agenda such as it is. That's never going to happen.
I don't think he's got a domestic agenda.
Of if rather than
well, it's interesting. We had obviously the Scottish Labour leader in Anasawa yesterday in that speech, 2:30, basically saying, the Prime Minister needs to go. And then we had basically, the Prime Minister at his age just sat there ringing around, and every cabinet minister very quickly post a message expressing your support. And you've had Ed Miliband out doing the rounds today, fully 100% behind the Prime Minister. No one believes that for a nanosecond. First time now we've heard from the Labour First Minister of Wales, Eluned Morgan, who has come out in support of Keir Starmer, saying, "I support the Prime Minister in the job he was elected to do. After years of revolving door leadership under the Conservatives, the country needs stability in an age of instability, and that matters for Wales." She says, "I had concerns that Peter Mandelson was incompatible with public office because of the company he's kept. What has since come to light has only reinforced those concerns. These issues are deeply troubling. Failure must be acknowledged and confronted honestly," but says that leadership means upholding standards and acting when they fall short. "Ultimately, I judge any Prime Minister by a simple test, whether they deliver for Wales." Got to be honest with you, it's not the most full-hearted, strong support. It's basically, we can't deal with the instability right now. We've got elections coming up. So, and I didn't agree with what you did, and I think your decision to appoint Matt Mandelson was wrong, and I told you at the time. And I'm grudgingly, a day late, going to be saying I support you for that. That is not a strong support of the Prime Minister.
No, and he never had it to begin with. People were in favour of him because they felt like he would steady the ship of the Labour Party, that he would look more electable. Quiet managerialism after the Corbyn years seemed like a good idea, and it worked because of the fact that they won an election. But as we all know, that was a very odd election. Turnout plummeted. The Tories lost the election rather than Labour winning it, and yes, it was a sizable majority, but it was one that was essentially built on sand, very low turnout and not a lot of enthusiasm. There's never really been any sort of Starmerites. What even is a Starmerite? What is the agenda?
What is Starmerism?
He doesn't personally seem to compel a lot of loyalty. He doesn't have a great relationship with many MPs. He's not a political animal, even in the sense of ideology.
He has no sort of constituency.
Yeah, or in the sense of just playing the game. He does neither. It's a really unusual type of politician. We've had people who are just careerists and really good at playing the game and whatnot. You have people who are really in it for principle and policy and ideology, like it or lump what they're saying. He's neither. Yeah. He's been found out. He's just a husk. He's just there.
I've always said he's an empty. He's risen without trace.
Yes,
that's the really bizarre thing about him. And I remember the debates before the general election in 24 about what kind of Prime Minister would he be, because it was obviously he was very much sort of pushing quite a Blairite sort of, new Labour-y kind of world, and a lot of his advisors and the like, Morgan McSweeney, Mandelson's protege. How's that working out for everybody? And he's brought in a load of Blairite people. But, he ran in 2020 on a very leftist ticket. Yeah. Also, he was a white straight man, so obviously he had to win because they only elect white straight men as leaders. It just makes me...
It's in the rules somewhere,
I couldn't care less, and I'm telling you, next time round, it's going to be a white straight man. Angela, sweetheart, David Lammy, good luck with all that. It's going to be... Even Wes, it's going to be a white straight man. That's the hilarity of these people who are obsessed with these things. So don't matter. What your genitals are, your skin colour is, and who you decide to go to bed with, totally irrelevant, as long as it's legal. Totally irrelevant to whether someone's going to be a good leader or not. But they just always end up letting straight white man. It just makes me laugh because they're so 100%
hit rate.
They're so obsessed with it. But we said at the time we didn't know which it'd be. And the thing is, it wasn't that what we didn't have enough information. Is that he doesn't know what he is because
exactly.
he is nothing. He's just empty.
Yeah, and the thing about the empty vessel, it has to be filled with something.
And that's what the Blair Act, they'd be like, well, we'll just make him one of ours.
Exactly, and he was an active participant in that. He realised he didn't have a lot of know-how, expertise or ideas, so you defer to people around you, whether that's McSweeney, whether that's the New Labourites, whether that's the last person he spoke to. That's what's happened, and it's led to a situation where he's just not from pillar to post constantly because scandals, he's got no agenda to fall back on, and you're just left with a man who believes in nothing. But I think what we've seen over the past 19 months is that can be a very dangerous thing, particularly at a time when there are big questions that confront us.
Well, that's why you end up with U-turns, you know. It's just because, again, I mean, it's something that Carl Turner, the Labour MP we spoke to, who's very, very supportive of him now, saying, you know, if he'd been speaking to the Labour Party, the backbenchers, if they actually put policy ideas to us, basically we'd be able to tell them they're rubbish. But you can't have a Prime Minister. I mean, 30 U-turns, virtually everything that he's done. And again, these are all things that weren't in the manifesto. There's literally launched on us from out of the blue, the getting rid of the jury trials for the vast majority of crimes. The cutting the winter fuel allowance for most pensioners. They're out of the blue stuff. That what did you just do? And of course, doesn't believe in any of it. Doesn't. I mean, this is the thing. He's such a bust, as you say. He's a busted flush. But they're going to stick with him. Why? Because the people who want to be leader now, there isn't the time right now to do it. They don't want, as you said, they don't want to have these election defeats, as the polls suggest they will be, on their books. They want it to have happened before them, and they're not ready. Wes Streeting's put out all those, apparently Mr. Plotter, plotting with Anna Sarwar. They deny it. I don't know. Clear. They're all plotting all the time. Angela Rayner, her website goes out by accident online. People can see her at Angela for Leader website. She's got £1 million for a campaign fund for that. You've got, I mean, Ed, you know, I mean, Andy Burnham, desperate to get back into Parliament. You've got David Lammy, who absolutely thinks he's a player, hilariously. And you've got Ed Miliband, who's still the most popular among Labour Party members, despite being Ed Miliband.
The fact Keir Starmer ever became leader of the Labour Party is a damning indictment of the Labour Party. The fact that we're talking about Ed Miliband, David Lammy, even Andy Burnham and Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner and all the rest of it. You know, I've never been a Labour supporter, but this was once the party of Clement Attlee, Nye Bevan, Tony Benn, Roy Jenkins, serious people who did things in the country, who were of substance, who had a vision of the world. What have we got now? I mean, people are talking about Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner as if they're God's gift to politics. Yes, they have a pulse in comparison to Keir Starmer.
They've got a gift of the gab. I mean, they do an interview well.
Exactly,
you know.
But, you know, Angela Rayner, a punchy public speaker, but not much else to say.
Can you imagine Angela Rayner
at
the G7? Seriously, I mean, just literally, Angela Rayner, or even Ed Miliband at a G7
but either
meeting.
of them, like Wes Streeting was just grown in a new Labour lab somewhere, as far as I can tell. I mean, there is not a lot here, and we also live in a time in which big decisions need to be made. There are about at least 3 or 4 crises going on at once. Yeah. The Labour Party and the left in particular need to come up with a new answer as to what their politics means in a time of increasing war, fiscal restraints and so on and so forth. But this shower are not going to come up with that.
But that's the thing.
They're just running on vibes.
Tony Blair came into power when there was so much money. You know, we were in surplus, everything was good. There was all that North Sea oil money, which again Margaret Thatcher got to benefit from as well. And so, you know, you could have tax cuts. You know, if you wanted, you know, but you know, he could just spend a fortune on the NHS, put everyone on the payroll in terms of welfare, child tax credits, you name it. Spend. Plenty of money to go around. Well, there isn't any more. I mean, there just isn't any money. We're borrowing. And then you got the likes of the Andy Burnhams and Ed Milibands and all of that, who are under the illusion that you could just ignore the bond markets. Good luck with that. The bond markets won't ignore you.
No, that I thought was such a revealing moment, because Andy Burnham is being talked up as the, you know, great hope of the Labour Party.
But again, a man who's run a city, he knows what he's doing.
But also, he's another failed Labour politician. I mean, he has done well in Manchester. Yep. At the same time, I think, you know, in getting some people to build some skyscrapers and setting up a new bus route does not prove that you can completely transform the country. That's all he's done.
More than Keir Starmer's managed.
Absolutely. Fair play to him. I'm sure it's a wonderful bus route. We're going up there soon, so I can try it out for myself. But it's still absurd that you're going back to Andy Burnham, the man who lost first to Ed Miliband when he was trying to be leader, then he lost to Jeremy Corbyn by a landslide, a man who has more positions on things even than the current occupant of number 10 Downing Street. The fact that we're going back to him, what has gone on? How did this happen?
You're
this
quite
used to be a
angry
serious
about
government.
this.
I'm insulted on behalf of the rest of the electorate that we are told that these are serious politicians who should run the country.
This is one of my things I feel about all political parties. I want all political parties to be run by a whole bunch of very competent, very able, with a long track record of success in some field or other, to be the contenders, so that we as voters, and I know people keep telling me how you think I vote. Trust me, I'm a floating voter. I do not ever shackle myself to any particular party because I know what happens when you do. My vote is up for grabs. So I want someone who's competent, moral. Yeah, I really feel very strongly about people, about integrity in public office. And I think when we go, oh, never mind, it doesn't really matter. Well, here we go, guys. That's what we've had for the last few years. And competence. But if we should have all the political parties should be having people who are competent and good and with integrity, and then we get to choose between them who's offering the best policies and who we think can deliver the best, as opposed to, well, you're rubbish and you've lied to us about everything. Yeah. So, you've got no experience and, none of your numbers add up. You're just a bunch of complete lunatics who think that you could just tax billionaires to pay for everything and then we can all just go and live in caves. You think that men have got women have got penises. You're living in cloud cuckoo land. We're left with a bunch of no-hoper, absolutely brain-addled incompetence. It couldn't pull a pint, let alone actually run a country, with mad ideas, totally out of touch with the British public, but also totally, utterly lacking common sense and a sense of reality when it comes to where the economy is, what we can actually do. And voters, we're going to have to get our acts together on this as well, because people have got to stop voting for parties that promise everything. We have no money. There is no money. We cannot keep having everything on the never, never. You can't just keep getting another payday loan to pay for the last payday loan's interest payments. We are going to have to accept that at some point. And you think we're in hair shirt territory now? You ain't seen nothing yet. And if we do end up with someone like Andy Burnham or Ed Miliband or Angela Rayner, and the bond markets go, I don't sodding well think so, we are looking at forget the economic crash 2008-9, guys. Forget the difficulties we had after lockdown. That is going to be playground territory compared to what's going to happen if that happens. We are really, really in a very dangerous territory, and these are serious times, and I don't think we've got enough serious people in our politics to deal with it.
No, I think that's right. I also think anyone who thinks that Burnham or Rayner or anyone else would take things in a more left-wing direction, I think it would also be disappointed, because I think a lot of this is just vibes. I think a lot of this is just rhetoric. I think a lot of this, and that's even more insulting in a sense. If you've got people who want to do something crazy, at least they might mean it. At least they might have some conviction. I think the Labour Party is basically just bumping from one issue to the other at the moment. What makes the Labour backbenchers feel good or bad about themselves is the kind of guiding ethic of the day. And the vast majority of people in frontline politics for some time now have been basically not good enough to run a parish council, but we've been stuck with them. And that's maybe okay when things aren't quite as bad, but certainly where we are now is dangerous. Absolutely.
Look, we haven't even got on to the King, and I do want to talk about, we're going to talk about the King with Norman Baker's written a very interesting book, as you know, about the royal family and their finances, and about these investigations by the Metropolitan Police that the King says he's going to cooperate with. We're going to take a quick break now. We're going to take your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Can the PM survive to the end of the year? Who, if any of them, would you like to take over from him? Love to hear your thoughts. This is Talk.
So in the time that Labour have been here, more people have come illegally, young men, fighting age men, men that do not share our culture, have come to our country, and we are now facing a situation where our army is smaller than the amount of illegal migrants that have come here under this Labour government. Any government can smash those gangs, any government can turn back those boats. Again, it is about the will of the government to do it. It can be done. They've done it in Italy, they've done it in Australia. We can do it here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:23 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Ian has done that. He's in London. Hello, Ian. What do you want to say?
Good morning,
Good
Julia.
Morning.
Starmer will be gone by the end of the year. Who will replace him? No one springs to mind except John McDonnell. I don't know if he's even still in the Labour Party.
I kind of see it's John McDonnell. I think he is still a Labour MP, isn't he? Can we? Did he lose the whip over something, and whether he's got it back? But hold on a minute. This John McDonnell was a name that was just mentioned actually by Carl Turner, who's he calls himself a soft left Labour MP, fully supporting the Prime Minister right now. He was saying that people like John McDonnell are sort of people that the Prime Minister needs to be listening to. Are you sure that's a good idea?
I personally do not like John McDonnell for personal reasons, being an ex-soldier. I think he's an IRA apologist.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I think he is. I mean, he actually is.
No, Julia, I got thrown out of a meeting calling him all sorts of things when he came to a local branch. I know what he is. But economically, he's sound. But he can't do any worse than that trade to Hillary Benn or Starmer, who prosecuted our boys on a false lie over a war that was fought for a lie.
No, listen, you misunderstood me. I don't think that John McDonnell is. I know he and Jeremy Corbyn are absolutely IRA apologists. You say, but he's economically sound. I mean, their entire manifesto was geared around, we're going to tax those rich people over there and we're going to splurge way more money on the public. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, those numbers don't add up, mate. That's not economically sound.
But he was talking about revitalising that infrastructure. Now,
with what? With what?
Well, it was more than what we had after Boris Johnson had finished with the country, and that's a fact.
I think John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn were living delusional lives, not worried, not thinking what the bond markets would do. They wouldn't be trusted by the money people who would just bump up our interest rates. You can't tax rich people enough anymore to actually get that stuff done.
I've listened to John McDonnell. He's very persuasive.
He's a very clever man.
And I think he could persuade the money men. But I'll move on.
No, he couldn't. Trust me. They're only interested in whether or not they think we're good for making our interest payments.
Well, all I know is I'll get over my personal dislike to the man's intelligence and acumen.
I think he's very intelligent. I wish he would use his powers for good, if you know what I mean. that's kind of where I am on that. I don't think he's economically sound. I think genuinely that would be a disaster for our country. But we've got different political standpoints. I really appreciate your call. Thank you, Ian. John is in Stoke-on-Trent. Hello, John.
Hello. Well, I think we're stuck with the Starmer.
How long for?
For the duration of Parliament.
Oh, really?
I think West Streeting's shot himself in the foot. I mean, these taxis, they're a bit creepy. But
his messages, people don't know, he released all of his messages that he'd had with Mandelson, because he was known as a bit of a Mandelson protege. I read them all from start to finish. I didn't really see anything that was going to be a problem for him personally.
Yeah, but he said the economy was flatlining.
Well, he's got eyes and ears. I mean,
well, that won't go down well with.
I prefer people. No, I mean they won't like it, but it's what everyone knows.
Yeah, but the Chancellor will stab him in the back over that, won't she?
Yeah, but she hasn't got any. She hasn't got any say. I mean, she's part of the problem. But here's the thing. You think that Streeting is not a runner. In which case, who do you think is?
Well, that's the problem. There's only Big Ange, and she's up to her neck in the scandal. till she sorts that out. So I think we just stuck with Starmer.
What about, I mean, Ed Miliband, apparently not running, totally loyal, but I mean, Ed Miliband is certainly still a favourite among Labour Party members.
I've never met anybody who thinks the Green agenda is a good idea, you know.
No. But apparently with the Labour Party members, it is.
Yeah, but they want to go out and talk to just normal people.
There is that. That might be people losing their jobs because of the Green agenda might be a good idea. John, you sound a little bit downhearted by it all, and I agree with you. John in Stoke-on-Trent, thank you for that. Tom Slater, I mean, what do you make of those schools?
Well, I think I can understand the sense of despair because we're lumbered with this lot. We're lumbered with Keir Starmer until May, until the aftermath of the local elections. Yeah. That's he will go after that. There's no two ways about that. But we are lumbered with him for the time being. We're also lumbered with this Labour government for a while longer, and this is a point that a previous guest has made on your show. There is no way they're going to call an early election. It's not within their interest to do so. Things would have to get so much, things would have to turn around to such a degree that they thought, oh, now's the time. I think a lot of the talk is it would be forced on them by a collapse of the pound, the money, and basically you have to go to the election. But I'm not entirely sure at that scenario that going to an election is a good idea. Well, that's the other thing. It would just be more instability, and that's one thing where, of course, we shouldn't let the markets completely rule every single decision making when it comes to politics. No, but they only have a say when people are acting incompetently. Oh no, of course. But if we're looking at the direction of travel where that's concerned, if anything, that suggests that Keir Starmer will limp on as long as is humanly possible, because the issue and the concern and the skittishness amongst the markets is whether or not his replacement, even less his replacement, who the next Chancellor is, will be more left-wing and therefore more... Yeah. Well, and it doesn't matter, whoever the replacement is, it doesn't matter what it is, the policies will move to the left, and that is going to be a problem. Let's take a quick break. It's coming up to 11:30. We're going to be talking to Lord Barwell. He's a former Chief of Staff to in Downing Street to the former Prime Minister Theresa May. That went well. We'll find out what he makes of all of this up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:31 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and lots to talk about, including we're going to be talking about the King, saying that he stands ready to support the police probe into Andrew, his brother, amid claims that he'd leaked confidential documents to his paedophile best pal, Epstein, and of course other criminal investigation also over women being taken to Buckingham Palace while the late Queen was away in Balmoral for dinner, and goodness knows what else, as supplied by Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, all wrongdoing has been denied, but we'll be talking about that with Norman Baker in a few moments. First up, though, let's talk to Lord Barwell. Gavin Barwell is the former Chief of Staff to Theresa May when she was Prime Minister in Downing Street, and he joins us now. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Well, I mean, I suppose just looking from the outside in, you were there at the centre of goodness knows how many machinations over Theresa May's premiership, an early election called, and a majority lost, and all of the infighting we had over the Tory leadership and over Brexit. Looking from the outside now, what do you make of what's going on in Number 10, and how do you think it's going to work itself out?
I think on the second question, the Prime Minister's on borrowed time. Yeah. It's very difficult, I think, to see how he reasserts his authority. You'll know there's a huge amount of information that's going to be released over the next weeks and months. Some of that is going to be very damaging, I suspect. That's into the decision-making process for him to have appointed Mandelson as our ambassador to the US. Correct. So the Conservatives drew the humble address last week very widely. So it's not just the papers around the vetting, it's also all the communications between ministers and Mandelson. So I would be amazed if there's not more damage to come there. And then he's got a really difficult set of elections coming up in May where Labour are likely to do very badly. So I find it very hard to see how it's a question of when, I think, rather than if. Well, this is what your party leader has said this morning. Kemi Badenoch has said that he's in office, not in power. He's been given a stay of execution only, and it's a question of when and not if he goes. Do you think the main reason he's not gone is because actually the cabinet members rallied around him yesterday, standing ovation from some 400 MPs and Lords in the House of Commons at the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting last night, apparently showing a wonderful passion and commitment and vision, we are told by one Labour MP, Carl Turner, earlier on the show? Or is it because basically they're not ready to go quite yet, and the Labour leadership contenders are all just waiting for, an HMRC investigation in case of Angela Rayner? Andy Burnham's waiting to try and get back into Parliament, Wes Streeting's waiting for his Mandelson links to be forgotten about. Do you think that actually the time is not quite ready? Yeah, I think that's the primary reason. I think if you were one of the people wanting to take over from him, why would you take over before really difficult elections where you're going to get a hammering? It would be much better for those people if Keir Starmer takes the blame for that and you take over after that. There probably is a secondary factor here, which is I suspect some Labour MPs are rightly worried that they are repeating the mistakes that the Conservatives made at the end of the last government. I think most of your listeners and viewers would just want some stability in our politics and an end to all of this kind of drama, and a government that focuses on trying to improve our economy and people's living standards and all the other things that need sorting out in this country. So there may be some Labour MPs looking at this and saying, well, I might not be 100% happy with everything Keir Starmer's done, but I'm not convinced that going through this is going to make it any better. But then equally, as has happened with your old boss, Theresa May, there comes a point when there's no expectation that things are going to get any better and the polls aren't looking good when action is taken. I was thinking one of the things that I think Theresa May has in common with Keir Starmer is no one really knows what either of these people stand for, what they think, what their purpose in government. Oh, public service, yes, but what does that mean? What did they want to be Prime Minister to do? What did they want to achieve in office? That's something they do share in common, and it's a problem in a Prime Minister who hasn't got a specific vision and an aim and a purpose. I think that's a little bit harsh on you. You'd expect me to say this. I think that's a little bit harsh on Theresa. I think that if you want to understand her and what she wanted to do, the thing to do is to read the speech she gave outside Number 10 on the day that she got the job, where she talked about trying to create a country that works for everyone. I think that the problem she had is that her premiership was inevitably dominated by trying to find a way of solving the Brexit question. She inherited literally a blank piece of paper, both from the Leave campaign and from David Cameron, about how that was to be done. And so she never really got the chance, I think, to show what kind of Prime Minister she would have been absent Brexit. But nonetheless, I think you're right about Keir Starmer. I mean, it strikes me he's not really much of a politician. No. He's more of a kind of civil servant and a lawyer. And if you went out and asked people on the street today, what does he stand for? I think people would struggle to answer that. Whereas a Margaret Thatcher or a Tony Blair, people would have had a much clearer idea of what. And it's the hardest thing of the job, Julia, to be honest, right? The government, as you know, the government does thousands of different things. And so the challenge for a Prime Minister is how do you weave them together into a story about the kind of country that you're trying to create? And that feels like completely absent at the moment. But this is, isn't it? This is where all parties are coalitions. The Labour Party is a coalition from
very, very, very hard left, you know, your John McDonnells, you know, and on the to very, very, very Blairite vote. The Conservative Party, your own party, a massive coalition from basically, to all intents and purposes, Lib Dems, all the way to people who could quite easily jump ship to Reform. And you've been part of this Prosper movement with Andy Street and Ruth Davison, sort of saying, look, basically, we've got millions of voters who are, you know, very centre-right. They want to vote for us. They're centrist, and the future of the Conservative Party is there. Do you really believe that? Because this is like Keir Starmer, sort of like the future of these parties. We're told the centre ground is where elections are won, but aren't you, and frankly a lot of the Labour Party, fairly delusional about where the centre ground is? Because the centre ground is way further back to the right of where you lot in politics think it is. You lot all moved left, massively left, and the rest of the British public just stayed where we were and went, where the hell have you lot gone?
So I don't agree with that, but I think there is a grain of truth in what you say. I mean, I think the centre ground is in different places on different issues. I suspect I'm to the left of the centre ground on some issues, and I'm pretty well placed on it on others. But the key thing I would want to say to you is we're not saying that the Conservative Party should shift wholesale to the centre ground. I actually agree with what you said, that the strength of the Conservative Party is when it builds a broad coalition. So the challenge for Kemi Badenoch is how she simultaneously appeals to some voters who might be tempted by Nigel Farage and Reform, but also has some appeal to traditional centre-right voters. Who would have similar kind of values to me. And that, if you think about when the party has won, it's won by building those broad coalitions. So I want to be very clear about this. I'm not saying, like, abandon all those people and just shift to the centre. I'm saying try and build a big tent, because that is what is necessary in order to win.
It's, of course, then you've got the same issue that Keir Starmer has. You've got a very, very big tent. You've got his 400-odd MPs. And they actually all think completely different things. And they thought they were elected to do completely different things, which is why you end up with this infighting.
It's hard, but some people pull it off, right? Margaret Thatcher pulled it off. She built a broad coalition like that. To a lesser extent, David Cameron pulled that off. And
literally a coalition government with another party.
Yeah, but he then won a majority in 2015. But my point is, the people that are successful in British politics are the ones who are skillful enough to build a platform that allows people like you and I that don't agree on everything to feel there's enough of what we agree in that agenda that we're prepared to support it. And the final thing I'd say to you, which I think is almost undeniable, is when you and I first got interested in politics, it was basically a two-party system.
Yeah.
Now it's not. And the Conservative Party used to be the party of the right, or the centre-right, however you want to phrase it, and the Labour of the left. But now the Conservative Party is going to go into the next election with a party to its right. And that must have some effect on the market that it is trying to appeal to.
Right. I have to say, the first party I supported was the SDP.
There you go, right? Well, you were a centrist, Julia. There you are, look. You see?
I am. That's what I'm saying. I think I'm very representative of an awful lot of the public. We just don't often get our parties elected, but there we are. I want to come on.
Probably you and I would, there are issues, if we talked about the economy, probably there's actually quite a lot of common ground between you and I. If we went on to some other issues, we might have very different opinions. So the other thing we're saying is focus on the economy, because it's the most important thing. And it's also the issue that unifies that centre-right tribe.
Also, any party in power can get away with an awful lot as long as people aren't getting poorer, and that hasn't happened for a very long time.
Exactly.
Let me ask you just finally about the King. The King issued a statement, well, the Palace issued a statement on behalf of the King and Queen, saying that the King stands ready to support the police probe into Andrew, his brother, amid claims that he leaked confidential documents to Jeffrey Epstein when he was UK trade envoy. He was trade envoy from 2001 to 2011. There's also allegations about him wanting to set up business with Epstein in China. But also, of course, we've got ongoing allegations about women models, and other issues regarding, the actual, the most sordid side of the Epstein revelations. The King, issuing this statement, what is he saying in this statement, the King? Because to me, although the King acted very quickly, far quicker than Keir Starmer did with Mandelson, in terms of dealing with Andrew and basically saying, lose your HRH, lose your title, you lose your home, your grace and favour and all of that. But fundamentally, this is a statement that the Palace will do the bare minimum that most of us would expect in terms of cooperating with an investigation into Andrew. And does this not imply that until this point, Buckingham Palace had been obstructing that?
I don't think it does imply that. I think both His Majesty and the Prince and Princess of Wales have wanted to signal this week that the institution of the royal family will do everything asked of it to cooperate to get to the bottom of what's happened. And I am a very strong supporter of the institution of the monarchy, and I think His Majesty and Prince William have handled what is a very, very difficult issue skillfully, and I think it's to their credit. It's much better for this to be handled by His Majesty and the family than for politicians to start to have to get involved in it. And I think he's handled it, as you were implying, maybe better than some of the politicians have handled the scandal as it has affected politicians.
Okay. Right. Really good to talk to you, Lord Barwell, former Chief of Staff to Theresa May when she was Prime Minister in number 10. Tom Slater from Spatch Online, just come back on anything you want to come back there. What are your thoughts?
I mean, to be brutally honest, whilst Labour are not making a terribly good fist of it, they'd probably do better than to take too much advice from Theresa May's Chief of Staff. Also the man, Lord Barwell, who
I didn't want to get into a whole Brexit battle there. I didn't feel we had the time.
I do want to point out, just because it's funny, that he did write a book called How to Win a Marginal Seat, and then he lost that marginal seat about 16 months later. I think
that is quite funny.
On the question of the substance, though, as Gavin was talking about there is this slogan, this idea of you need to win elections from the centre ground, and in some senses that is true. The problem is, insofar as you have a base of support and then you reach out beyond that in order to build out your percentage of the vote, and therefore that can turn into a proper serious majority. The issue the Conservative Party have is they don't have a base of support anymore. Yeah. That's completely eroded. Much of it is defected to reform and has just been withering on the vine for many years now.
But also where they think...
Without a base, you can't build out. And
but also where they think... Because the Tory party has been New Labour light. And so for all these years, the British public going, I think we should have borders, and I think we should deport people who shouldn't be here, and I think we should put people who commit crimes behind bars, and we should support British culture. These are considered far right views. These are utterly, and people shouldn't be allowed to just be on welfare as long as they want, no matter what. These are not far right views. These are absolutely mainstream views. I would say they were left wing views when I was growing up. It's just quite extraordinary. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Up next, we're going to be talking more about the King and what he had to say, basically saying he stands ready to support the police probe into Andrew and his links with Epstein. But how much was being covered up until now? Maybe not by the King, maybe by the staff, maybe by the late Queen. We can't wait to talk to Norman Baker about all of that. He's up next. This is Talk.
The union block vote will be a huge constituent part of who gets elected. Also, the Labour membership will be further to the left even than the Labour Parliamentary Party. I think all roads lead to Rayner. Now, she's got some tax issues to deal with and sort out, but if she gets that out of the way, I would have thought that it's hers to lose.
Will the country be better or worse without Starmer? I mean, you're saying Rayner might be there, Ed Miliband potentially. Is it going to be a brighter future without him, or is it going to be even worse?
Things can only get worse.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. It's just coming up to 11:48. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just some breaking news that the government has apparently told government ministers not to publish their messages with Peter Mandelson. Wes Streeting, of course, the Health Secretary did that yesterday, seen as something of a protégé of Mandelson. He published his messages. I have to say, I don't think they were particularly damning at all. I think he wants to get those out there. But no, they've been now told, don't share your messages with the former ambassador to the United States. And basically, the investigation into alleged misconduct in public office is underway, and it is vital due process is followed so that our criminal investigation and any potential prosecution is not compromised. That is what this is from the Metropolitan Police. They are saying that rather than the government. Very true. Everyone's been given a little bit of slap on the wrist. Don't put the information out there publicly. We want it all private for now. Anyway, very interesting development there. We'll talk about that, no doubt, more after 12. Right now, though, let's talk about where we are with the King dealing with Andrew. Of course, the fallout of the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein between Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, basically almost could eventually bring down the Prime Minister. But concerns for bringing down, well, the whole monarchy. Some US politicians saying this could bring down the monarchy. But what do you make of the King saying he stands ready to support the police in their probe into his brother amid claims that he leaked confidential documents to his paedophile friend Jeffrey Epstein? Well, let's talk about this with Norman Baker. He's a former Lib Dem MP, but he's also author of And What Do You Do? What the Royal Family Don't Want You to Know, an investigation into the Royal Family's finances. Very good morning to you, Norman.
Hello, Julia. Nice to speak to you again.
Nice to talk to you. Well, with your hat on as effectively a royal author, but not the usual kind of royal authors. Most royal authors, they're basically sort of going, oh, aren't they wonderful? Look at some pretty pictures of Kate in a dress. That's kind of where we are. You very much take a very different attitude about basically the complete black hole of Buckingham Palace and the royal family's finances and who owns what and who pays what tax and whatever. Using from that perspective, when you saw the statement from the King saying that he and the Queen, they stand by for Buckingham Palace to support this police probe into Andrew, whether it's about anything involving any sexual misdeeds, and there have been allegations of that, which he denies, or into leaking his confidential documents to Epstein, which, if these Epstein files are true, would certainly be a crime. But of course, we don't know if they're true, and there's a police probe into that, and he's denied all wrongdoing. But what do you make of all of that?
Well, look, I mean, I think the royal family and the King and the Queen Elizabeth before him did as little as possible. The objective in their strategy was to say nothing and hope it would all go away. Then when they had to say something, they said, well, it's Andrew. He's been ring-fenced, nothing to do with us. We're innocent. And actually, it's not quite as simple as that, because the questions build up for them. I mean, the picture of Andrew with Epstein in New York Central Park emerged in 2011, I think, 15 years ago. What was the royal family doing then? They must have interviewed Andrew at that point and said, what are you doing with a convicted sex offender? Did they do that? We don't know. Then there's the £12 million payoff to Virginia Giuffre. Who paid for that? The allegation was the Queen paid for that. We don't know if it's true or not. But anyway, is that the way to deal with these victims, is to just pay them off? Is that endorsed by the royal family? And the picture of Andrew and Virginia Giuffre, which clearly is real, notwithstanding Andrew's attempts to say it was false, did they not interview him about that? So they've done as little as possible for 15 years. They're behind public opinion all the way through.
Well, that's it. It's been very much the view. And I would say, the King has acted very, very quickly and abruptly, far more so than Keir Starmer did in terms of the issues when he became king. He wasn't king. His late mother was queen. Andrew, by all accounts, her favourite son. And certainly there does seem to be a view that, well, just obviously Andrew would go in and say to his mother, oh, no, it's all lies, mother, it's all lies, and this would be believed. Now, we've spoken to guests in the last couple of weeks who were senior figures, press secretary to the late Queen, Guy Davies, the former head of Royal Protection, talking about, so these police officers who close protection, they're with Prince Andrew. They know where he is. They know whether he's staying at a convicted paedophile's home or not. They're there. They report back where they are. There are records of all of this, and that this stuff would undoubtedly, both men said, would undoubtedly go up the ranks and would have undoubtedly reached the Queen's principal private secretary. Now, the question is whether the private secretary would then tell the late Queen about this or not, or was she shielded by it? But certainly, if you're signing off best part of 10 million quid to a woman who your son has apparently never met, you might be asking questions. Do you think that there has, certainly under the late Queen, been an urge to cover this up? Was it for the sake of Andrew, the Queen's favourite son, or was it for the firm? Because we know from all the revelations we've had over the years that the firm comes first. The institution comes first.
Yes. Well, I mean, you can pick any scandal in the last 100 years, and the reality is always that the royal family tries to ignore the scandal, then you try and cover it up as best they can and try and move on. And they'll respond to the public if they have to, but giving as little ground as necessary. That's what they did, for example, with Diana. That's what they did all the way through. That's the standard response. When they see a crack in the wall, they don't mend the wall, they read paper over it and hope it'll all go back to normal. That's what they do. But on the police point, there's a very interesting one here, Julia. As part of my research for my newest book, by the way, quick plug for Royal Mint National Debt, I asked the Metropolitan Police through a Freedom of Information Act where their detail was with Andrew on the night he was either at Tramp nightclub or at Peach Express in Woking. And they must know where he was because they keep records.
Yeah.
They won't tell me. Now, if he was really at Pizza Express, why doesn't Andrew get those logs published to prove he was there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We know that information exists. Well, there's been also a big issue of the fact that the Metropolitan Police are, by all accounts, looking into allegations that a second woman has made claims that she was trafficked for sex with Prince Andrew, as he then was. And we've also got these allegations that are contained in the latest Epstein files where if they're genuine, documents showing for information he was getting as a UK trade envoy being forwarded straight, within minutes to Epstein, very similar to what the allegations are about Peter Mandelson when he was business secretary during the economic crisis. But we know that when the allegations were made by Virginia Giuffre, very serious allegations that as a 17-year-old girl, she was trafficked to the UK to have sex with Andrew. There was a picture, etc. We now know for sure the Metropolitan Police at no point interviewed Andrew about that. Does that suggest to you there is an institutional cover-up at a much higher establishment level? It's not just the palace. There is also a general sort of, the establishment will just try to make things go away. And Andrew has been protected all that time.
Well, not just Andrew, the royal family generally. The police don't want to take on the royal family. And in fact, there's a chapter in my book called Nothing to See Here, Move Along, which is their attitude towards anything to do with the royal family. You look at that case when Charles was caught red-handed, in my view, promising somebody help with their passport application in return for money for his good causes.
And a bag of cash, literally a carrier bag of cash.
Yes. Sorry about the helicopter going above. Yes.
That's okay.
A huge bag of cash. It was so obvious that was a quid pro quo. It was in writing from Michael Fawcett, and I reported that to the police. They did nothing about that, And
also, once that there was an investigation of some sort, but then once the late Queen died, and Charles became king, that did seem to disappear. That story.
Everything disappears. I have no confidence in Metropolitan Police or any other police force to investigate these matters properly. As regards the suggestion that Prince Andrew, who was passing information on in his capacity as trade envoy, well, again, in my book, there's information about suggestions, which were also in the Mail on Sunday, that he did similar things to pass on information to other entrepreneurs he was taking on his overseas trips with them. Yeah. So this is not new in a sense.
No. There have been allegations, and again, though, it wasn't just the photo of him in New York in Central Park with Epstein that came out in 2011 that forced him out of that role. There were lots of allegations about his friends with a convicted gun dealer and Gaddafi's son, and it's very unsavoury. Again, he's never met a dodgy billionaire he doesn't like, as I've said many times. Look, neither you nor I are staunch royalists. A lot of my audience are. The majority of the public are. They loved the late Queen. I had huge respect for how she carried out her duties in terms of putting, the job ahead of everything else, of being the leader of this, the Queen of this country. Charles is not as popular, never will be as popular as the late Queen was, I don't think. But a lot of people would say. A lot of my audience go, he's done a good job. He's done his best. It's his brother. He's acted as soon as he had the power to act, to strip away titles, take away his big fancy place at Royal Lodge. Yes, he's given him somewhere to live, but that's basically the words of the phrase of the weekend was contain him, keep him quiet, out of reach at Sandringham. Do you think it's legitimate to criticise? Do you think that the king himself has a case to answer?
I don't think he's been as quick. I don't think he has been as quick as he could have been. And I said he'd have been part of the discussions in the last 15 years. So he's not been as quick as he has been.
Do you think he would have known about all of this?
Of course. I think, of course, he knew about it. It would be impossible as Prince of Wales not to know about that. And I think there are other issues, of course, Julius, we discussed before about royal finances and so on. So it's not a question really, in a way, as to whether you want a monarchy or whether you don't want a monarchy. The question is, do you want this particular monarchy or do you want a different monarchy? And the reality is that the monarchies elsewhere in Europe, by and large, are much, much cheaper, are much, much slimmer, and much less inured, in the Norwegians except at the moment, in scandal as our one is.
Is there an element that, of course, if you're going to have a family that you say that the highest family in the land is the royal family, and it's going to be chosen by who people marry and what kids they have, you're going to get some wrong uns, you're going to get some good uns, you're going to get some wrong uns.
And do you know what? That's an argument for a republic, because you can get someone on the throne like Elizabeth II, who people do think was diligent and did her best for the nation. But you can also get Edward VIII, who was basically a Nazi. You don't choose who you get on the throne. It's Buggins' turn almost. And let's remember that if Charles had died before Harry and William were born, King Andrew on the throne now.
Well, indeed, Andrew is still technically, even despite the titles being taken away, he's still technically 8th in line to the throne. So, let's not have everyone on the same plane, that's for sure. Norman Baker, very interesting to talk to you, author of And What Do You Do? What the Royal Family Don't Want You to Know. I'm going to get Tom Sater's response to that. We've got a little bit more time just after the news. We're going to talk to the commentator of the Mail on Sunday, Dan Hodges. Going to be taking more of your calls. Want to hear your thoughts on the King and his actions. I want to hear your thoughts on Keir Starmer. How long can he survive? Will he make it to the end of the year? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connection device, thank you so much for your company. If you missed anything from the show so far, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. And if you just all do it, then I can stop yapping on and saying that, because I'm sure I'm testing your patience with that. But lots more to talk about coming up in this hour. More about Keir Starmer telling MPs last night that he's not prepared to walk away from number 10, and another not particularly ringing endorsement from the Welsh First Minister, Elena Davies, today, after, of course, being told basically you need to go by the Scottish Labour leader, Anna Sarwar. We've got the Met Police saying to all the Labour people, ministers and everyone in government, could you all stop publishing your messages from Peter Mandelson? Yes, we mean you, Wes Streeting, because we've actually got an investigation going on here. We're also going to be talking more in just a couple of moments about the King, promising to stand ready to support a police probe into his brother. And we're going to talk about MI5 warning universities, their vice-chancellors, the people who actually run the universities, that foreign spies, Chinese, are watching you. Also, the teenagers who are being fed harmful content within minutes of setting up social media accounts, despite the Online Safety Act. Oh, what a surprise. That wasn't going to solve everything. I know, we're all shocked. Anyway, all of that coming up. I want to hear from you. Two questions, really. I mean, especially the questions we've been talking about all day. Will the Prime Minister survive until the end of the year? He says he's not prepared to walk away, but is it really going to be up to him? Also, I want to know your thoughts on the King, saying, he's going to stand ready to support a police probe. Is that bare minimum? Has the King been part of the cover-up? I want to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, still joining me. Thank you very much. I'm going to talk to Dan Hodges, a columnist at the Mail on Sunday, in just a couple of moments. I want to ask you just about the conversation with Norma Baker. Look, he's a long-standing Republican. You all know, guys, I'm not a massive royalist. Massive respect for the Queen, the late Queen, what she did. I'd say I give credit to the King Charles. Since he's been on the throne, he's basically, made it really clear he doesn't approve of his younger brother Andrew. He wants him out of the family, quiet. And he's lost his HRH. He's lost his prince title. I don't think he can strip him from the Duke. I think the Duke is another one of those Act of Parliament things. Who knows? I don't really care. And I don't really care where he lives, as long as he's not costing me any money, and he's going to cost the King in Sandringham. Has he done enough? And when he says he stands ready to support police probe, does that imply in any way that actually Buckingham Palace has been blocking this until this time?
Well, it can't help but beg that question, does it? And the uncomfortable truth about the Andrew scandal is that it's the late Queen who seems to have done most to protect him, who, despite being someone who still commands a fair amount of respect, even
huge. I even people like me who are not royalists, like the woman carried out her duties with absolute aplomb.
But it is still a reminder that even during her reign, this is how the firm operates. It's primarily interested in maintaining itself,
the institution,
and the institution continuing on. And obviously, Andrew was still essentially, had his wings clipped. He was removed from royal duties. He was only ever to be seen at the kind of fringes of royal events towards the end of her reign, but still he was looked after to a certain degree. And I think this is the problem with Prince Andrew, is that he's a walking, talking advocate, campaigner for, unwittingly, for the end of the monarchy. He's a demonstration of what a sort of irrational institution it can be, not just because
you can't actually sack him from the institution.
No,
effectively,
you can't sack him.
You can sack a minister,
and as Norm pointed out, there could have been an alternative timeline in which he could have become king, with all of the thrills and spills that would have brought. But this is the thing. It's
he was
Thomas
second
Paine,
in line.
Thomas Paine put it very well about this. The thing about monarchy is that you're as likely to get an ass as a lion. We all know which one Andrew is.
Yeah.
And even with all that has happened, the fact that he's still kind of hanging around like a bad smell, because constitutionally and in terms of the line of succession, he still will have that kind of presence, just reminds you what a difficult institution it is when the people within it are not upstanding.
But is there an argument, though,
servants.
again, we only know about all this stuff because stuff's been made public online, and actually an awful lot gets covered up over the years. You know, and I know, I've been in newspapers or in the media for a very long time. There are plenty of stories that are known and well-known, say, in Westminster, or well-known in, like London circles, which just don't make it in the papers. And I'm not in a position to say them because I haven't got the evidence, but I'm pretty darn sure I believe them to be true. And, there are lots of things that don't come out because, people, look, grooming gangs, people come across, because it wasn't politic to bring it out. The idea that allegations, again, he's denied any wrongdoing, and let's be clear about this, the idea that revelations about the Queen's favourite and second son would have been pushed out without some deals being made. We know that the palace does this. They literally say, right, if you don't publish X or Y, we'll give you this or that. And then, we know that's what happens.
No, absolutely. And there's a tremendous amount of deal making that goes on. There's a tremendous amount of deference that goes on to the institution. It's telling that this latest eruption of the Epstein/Prince Andrew scandal happened because of release of documents in America.
In America, yeah.
The Department of Justice, who for coming up on 250 years now are not subject to the diktats of the Crown over here. So it's a reminder of how much influence and sway they still operate. I mean, we do have royal journalists, but they basically operate as a kind of more gilded version of Hello magazine.
Oh, they really do. They're embarrassing.
And these, there's many scandals which have been kind of quietly moved on from, shall we say. But this one isn't going away because it is the information is flowing from America, not from here, and it's something that even if they wanted to, the palace couldn't wish to.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. That's Tom Slater there. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. We'll get the thoughts also among a conversation about all what's going on with Dan Hodges, who's commentator at the Mail on Sunday, who joins us now. A very good afternoon to you, Dan.
And a good afternoon to you, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Prime Minister said yesterday, apparently to, standing ovation, banging of desks, lots of cheering from 400 MPs and peers. I'm not prepared to walk away. Carl Turner, Labour MP, a little earlier told me he spoke with passion and vision and commitment, and he said we want to see more of that. How long does the Prime Minister survive?
I think we're talking weeks. I think probably. I mean, the problem is for Keir Starmer. I mean, his position is the Mandelson crisis is politically unsurvivable, and would have been politically unsurvivable for most politicians in an optimum political situation. You've got to remember, coming into this crisis, Keir Starmer is now officially the least popular prime minister in British political history.
Quite a feat.
He's exactly. I mean, he's literally now polling below Liz Truss, which is in terms of his personal rating, which is just literally incredible. Also, the other thing is, which I don't think people understand. We had all the stuff from Labour MPs yesterday. We've got to move on. We've got to move forward. We are not at the end of the Mandelson crisis. We are only at the start of the Peter Mandelson crisis.
Yeah, because that's the thing. We haven't seen all these documents. You only had 3 million of them. They're redacted. There are plenty more to come.
And that's just the Epstein documents.
Yeah.
They're just the documents still in the, leaking out daily in the Department of Justice files. We've got, first of all, we've got an ongoing investigation of Peter Mandelson here. There will be a series of leaks that come out from that investigation, as there always are as this goes on. It's highly likely there may even be a court case that follows from this, in which all of the Labour Party and the government's dirty linen is going to be aired in public in a court of law. Even more crucially, in a relatively short space of time, we are going to start seeing the first documents published about what Keir Starmer was actually told about Peter Mandelson. And then on top of that, we've got this raft of documents that are going to come out, which will, unless they have some sort of national security import, will show communications between Peter Mandelson and everybody else in government for his entire time as ambassador.
He was a busy man.
He's a busy man. We got a taste of that. Yes.
Yeah, we saw Wes Streeting's messages. I have to say, I didn't think they were that damaging. That's why he put them out. But the Metropolitan Police have said today, can everyone stop doing that? We've got a police investigation. Give them trust.
Yeah, I heard you saying that. I mean, I'm going to be honest on this. The Met can get back in their box.
It's not up to them.
All right.
Yeah.
This is a major national crisis. This goes to the heart of how we as a nation have governed. Right. They need to get on with their job, do their investigation. There is nothing that is coming out that is in any way prejudicial to the
well,
issues.
They say an investigation into alleged misconduct in public office is underway, and it is vital due process is followed so that our criminal investigation and any potential prosecution is not compromised. They need to check that there's no detrimental impact on our investigation or any subsequent prosecution by anything provided. But this is it. I mean, it's not. I mean, this is people's personal.
Sorry, that's not how it works.
These are people's personal messages. They're entitled to publish anything they sort of well want to.
That's it, exactly. They're personal messages. They're entitled to publish anything else. We as journalists have a duty and a responsibility to try and get to the bottom of these things. I mean, let's be honest. None of us have exactly put ourselves in glory on the Mandelson saga until this point. So we need to.
Sorry,
you are
I've
one
never
of the few
liked the guy.
You are one of the few notable exceptions.
And he felt the same way about me. I had him on the show on election night, but I think it's because he didn't realise it was me interviewing him. But there we are.
Well, that's why. But no, I mean, but there is a serious issue here because we are still going to have to fight to get to the truth. I mean, I was speaking to a minister yesterday who was saying, just wait and see what Keir Starmer actually does over the publication of these documents, because obviously, remember, we had a big debate in the House last week in which the Tories very skillfully. Credit to Kemi Badenoch on this. They very skillfully drew quite a very wide motion, which called for the publication of all communication from Peter Mandelson during his time as ambassador. Labour MPs were throwing their toys out the pram last week and voted for that motion. What I'm being told is, obviously we heard all the desk banging and the shows of support yesterday. That Keir Starmer is now going to look to see if there's any way that firstly he can limit the amount of information that's made public, and secondly, if that does come to another vote in the House of Commons, thinks he can probably now sort of strong-arm his MPs into backing him. So this idea that the Met's got that we can't. I mean, the Met are basically saying, don't say anything about it. Don't even mention the name Peter Mandelson until we've finished our investigations.
As you say, that's not how it works.
You're gone.
What do you make? You said
gone.
Your first answer to me was basically the Prime Minister last week. I mean, yesterday there was a point in the morning when we thought, especially after Morgan McSweeney's resignation as Chief of Staff on the Sunday, and then Tim Allen, his Director of Strategic Communications, we were all surprised to find out there had been any strategic communications, let alone anyone directing them. But he went. We're told the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Wormald, who only came to the job actually 4 days before Mandelson was actually appointed as ambassador, that he may be pushed out in the next few days as well. We've got a Prime Minister who apparently seems to think the problem is people advising him as opposed to the man making the actual decisions, which is him. And it was interesting that Morgan McSweeney in his resignation letter said, the decision to appoint Mandelson was wrong. He said the decision. Now, the person who makes that decision is, of course, the Prime Minister. We know that there was an expectation when Anna Sawa, in the Scottish Labour leader, when he made a speech yesterday, basically saying the Prime Minister needs to go now. We know there was an expectation that Cabinet Ministers would start speaking out. The ringing round by the Prime Minister and his aides quickly started. We had literally every minute another message dropped online on social media from a Cabinet Minister to say offer their support. We've had, I think, dragged kicking and screaming. The Welsh Labour First Minister, Eleanor Morgan, has issued tepid. I mean, you would definitely want to put the hot tap on into that bath to warm it up before you got in terms of her level of support. People are saying the Prime Minister's here to stay. You say weeks. Is it the Gorton by-election, without, for the love of God, naming any candidates? I'll have to read them all out. Is it the Gorton by-election that will do him? Is it the May local elections, Scottish and Welsh elections? Is it that the other contenders for the leadership aren't quite ready? Wes Streeting wants this whole Mandelson thing out of the way. Angela Rayner wants the HMRC investigation out of the way. Andy Burnham would like a by-election to get back into Parliament first. Is it that actually they're not quite ready, but they still expect to challenge him?
Yeah, there's an element of that. I mean, in terms of the various Labour tribes, there are a lot of people obviously aligned to Angela Rayner. She's not quite ready to push the button yet. A lot of them are aligned with Andy Burnham. They're still looking at ways of maybe getting Andy in with another seat. There's talk of Bootle sometime either later this year, possibly at the latest the start of next year. And obviously there's Wes, who is himself tainted to an extent by Mandelson himself because of his association, which is why he got out the emails. My own view is, and I'm going to be completely honest, I mean, I am genuinely surprised Keir Starmer hasn't already resigned over this, because I thought he would appreciate the key moment for Keir Starmer was last Wednesday when he stood up in the House of Commons and admitted to Kemi Badenoch he knew. Now, that was the moment. Now, he's tried to sort of row back from that. But I still think one of the key elements, we're all looking for these, like the emails between, Mandelson and ministers and the gossip and all that sort of stuff. We've still got this document that is going to come out, which I think is crucial to the whole affair. The document that was actually produced by the Cabinet Office, called the due diligence document. Now, my understanding is that explicitly said and warned Keir Starmer that Peter Mandelson had an ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein's initial conviction.
And we knew that was in the public domain already.
Well,
anyway.
it was in the public domain. Now, this is I will defend journalists. All of us who were covering this were working on the basis that because Mandelson had been put up for this very sensitive position, there must have been Cabinet Office vetting, Security Office vetting that had in some way given him a clean bill of health. And if you remember, when this crisis first broke last year, Keir Starmer made a big point of saying all due process was followed. Now, everyone assumed that when he said due process was followed, he meant the vetting had cleared Mandelson. I think that document is going to show that quite the opposite. The vetting said explicitly to the Prime Minister,
don't hire him.
There is an issue here. There is an issue. I don't think they will have said don't appoint him, but it clearly raised that. And I think that would simply blow out of the water Keir Starmer's claim that he didn't know. But even if he gets past all that, as you say, we've got the by-election and we've then got the local elections. The reality is, yes, the headlines this morning are the Labour Party has not yet given up on Keir Starmer. Fine. But the reality is the British people have given up on Keir Starmer. We will see that in the by-election, and we will see it again in the local elections. Yeah. And at that point, unless the Labour Party has a death wish, it's over for Keir Starmer.
But here's the thing also, none of this would really be a big political issue in terms of damaging the Prime Minister fatally if the economy was fine and he was seen to be a decisive leader. This is the sort of thing, frankly, a Tony Blair or a David Cameron could actually work around. I made a horrible mistake, but, I was lied to, move on. But because of the chaos and the indecision and the failures of this government and his own personal failures, he's not charismatic, he's not a good communicator. I don't think he has anything resembling self-knowledge. He's not a politician who's deft enough to get himself out of this mess.
No, the most accomplished political operator, frankly, couldn't get themselves out of this hole. But
I think the British public are very forgiving of people who, if they're doing well in their lives, when people are struggling, when people are financially struggling, they're a bit less forgiving.
I think that's a fair point. Although I think the association, a Prime Minister saying, Keir Starmer's best defence at the moment is, I was duped by the best friend of one of the world's most notorious paedophiles into appointing him as ambassador. There's not a huge amount of sympathy for that argument, I don't think. But you make a good point. I mean, I was on a different programme yesterday with a Labour MP who was being loyal, who was saying, the public aren't interested in all this. What they want is us dealing with the real issues, the economy, the cost of living crisis, the small boats. Well, we literally had Wes Streeting messages yesterday admitting the government hasn't got an economic or growth strategy at all. And if you want to go on the doorsteps telling people, you've got to keep Keir Starmer because he's doing a great job for you dealing with the cost of the living crisis and dealing with the small boats, good luck with that.
Can I ask you just finally, we're talking about the politics of this, but we were talking a little bit earlier with Norman Baker, former Lib Dem MP, very much a Republican, talking about this, how dangerous this is for the royal family. There's no doubt at all that the King Charles really wants this to go away. No love lost between him and his brother. We know Prince William as well. It's been very clear at family events. King, lots of people would argue, and I would argue, he acted very quickly to basically, lose the title, lose the home, lose the HRH, get him out of the way, obviously horrified by his behaviour. Has the King acted soon enough, or do you think this is all going to come back and bite the firm in the backside as well, over basically Andrew being, his misdeeds allegedly being covered up financially and over accusations about his relationships with or dealings with women who've been trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, and they've been covering it up all these years.
No, I actually think that, bizarrely, I actually think Buckingham Palace have been more deft in their management of this than Downing Street. Well, I mean, it's hard to not be more deft than the way Downing Street have managed it. But no, I mean, I think they have. I mean, I think from the beginning, even before we reached the crescendo, it was quite clear, the King was getting ahead and making, very strenuous efforts to distance himself. So I think, in a sense, he has insulated the institution. The one issue I would say, I saw your previous contributors saying this, it is absolutely the case that one of the issues that there has been in terms of getting to the bottom of this, all of the aspects of this saga, is that the late Queen did throw a protective arm around Andrew. But frankly, I mean, you were obviously saying, as somebody who's not a great loyalist, you were talking about your respect for her. I think if she was still on the throne, then there would be issues.
But
whether or not people are going to dig into her legacy to an extent it damages.
Yes, I doubt there's going to be much appetite for that. Just going to end, just let you know, Andy Burnham has the Mayor of Greater Manchester, of course. He was not among those who were tweeting support yesterday for the Prime Minister.
Message of support.
He's been asked whether Starmer has his full support. He's out and about this lunchtime, and Andy Burnham replied, yes, he does.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
There you go, Andy. He obviously lost his phone yesterday. Everybody else was messaging their message of support. Andy obviously...
It could happen to the best of us.
Happens to all of us.
Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday. Thank you for joining us. Really interesting analysis there. 12:23 is the time. Tom Slater, anything you want to come back on?
Well, it's a reminder, isn't it, today, that essentially the chaos in Westminster has taken all of the heat off of the palace. This story could have been very, very different if that Peter Mandelson appointment hadn't been made. We probably would have been having a deep and searching conversation about potential corruption within the monarchy, the future of the monarchy, reappraising the legacy of the late Queen. But because of the totally unforced error of this Labour government appointing Mandelson, the royal family was stuck with Andrew. The Labour Party could have jettisoned Mandelson a long time ago.
Well, they did. They kept jettisoning him and bringing him back.
So what a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. 12:24 is the time. Let's get to your calls after the next break. 0344 499 1000, whatever you want to say. Well, okay, keep it clean, keep it legal. Don't get me taken off air, for goodness sake. I want to hear it, though. This is Talk.
union bloc vote will be a huge constituent part of who gets elected. Also, the Labour membership will be further to the left even than the Labour Parliamentary Party. I think all roads lead to Rayner. Now, she's got some tax issues to deal with and sort out, but if she gets that out of the way, I would have thought that it's hers to lose.
Will the country be better or worse without Starmer? I mean, you're saying Rayner might be there, Ed Miliband potentially. Is it going to be a brighter future without him, or is it going to be even worse?
Things can only get worse.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. No, good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 12:27. Let's get to your calls. Just actually, before I do, just to remind you that Andy Burnham is now the latest after Eleanor Davies, the Welsh First Minister. So not just like leader of Wales, Welsh Labour Party, but actually the leader of Wales, the First Minister of Wales. She offered very lukewarm support for the Prime Minister. I do support the Prime Minister, but I have to say it took, best part of 24 hours to come after everyone else. We know the Scottish Labour leader wants him to go. Andy Burnham has the Mayor of Greater Manchester asked whether he had full support for the Prime Minister. He said, yes, he does have his full support. Downing Street, interestingly, they've issued a statement about their official readout of today's Cabinet meeting. The first rather, I imagine, awkward Cabinet meeting for the likes of Wes Streeting and others to attend. Downing Street said the Prime Minister said his top team of ministers is strong and united, and various other bits. But he said the government would continue its relentless focus on the priorities of the British people. I can't even keep a straight face reading it, including tackling the cost of living. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, carry on. Well done. Let's go to phone calls. It's laughable, this stuff. It really is. Relentless focus on the priorities of the British people. Is that what you're feeling today? The Prime Minister, they spent the whole of the last 48 hours trying to keep his job. Do you think anyone spent any time at all in that Cabinet actually doing the job they're employed to do to make our lives better and our country stronger? Give over. Anyway, let's go to the calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. A lot of you getting in touch about Andrew and the mess the royal family are in over his the allegations he faces. Jules is in Bedford. Hello, Jules.
Hiya. So I think the ongoing problem for the royal family is the fact that Andrew has been allowed to stay at the Sandringham estate.
Oh, really? You think he should be gone completely?
Well, but you have to wonder why he has been given this favour, because it would seem to me that the best thing you want if you're the King and Prince of Wales is to get as much distance and space to that person as you possibly can.
Well, in the Sunday papers, the claim was it's to, quote, contain him. So go away quietly, smaller house, not going to be seen riding in the public and the like. Get your Waitrose deliveries, apparently did at the weekend, and not, say, for instance, going off and living with, at the behest of some Dubai prince and having influencers hanging around. I think it's a damage limitation exercise.
I think you're absolutely right. But the question is, what are they afraid that he might say and tell if he's out on the loose?
Yeah, I think every time he opens his mouth, it's a problem.
Well, yeah, but has he got some leverage that they're worried about him using? That was my question.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting allegation. But then if he did, he wouldn't have been booted out of Royal Lodge or lost his titles.
Well, I think it's just a compromise, because bearing in mind Royal Lodge has a lot of public access around it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Sandringham estate where he is, as I understand it, there's no public access. So he's completely, he may as well be taped up in a cellar somewhere, really.
That's a better option. He may, again, everyone is, both Mandelson and Prince, as was Prince Andrew, have denied any of the allegations that have been suggested against them. We must put that, innocent until proven guilty. But, you never know. We may not have an issue in terms of where anyone lives. It could be that two men are sharing a prison cell at some point in a year's time.
Thanks for that image. That's great. Really
You're welcome. I don't know who gets the top bunk. I don't want to speculate. Jules, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew is in Gloucester. Andrew, you also want to talk about Andrew?
Yes, I do. It's appalling what he's done. I understand that.
Well, he's alleged to have done. I must stress that. I'm going to have to stress that.
What he's supposed to have done. But I I'm really not with the king abdicating. You know, no. I don't know what my brother's doing. I'm a 60-year-old man. I know it was a long time ago, but he can't be held responsible. No. And the other thing I do believe, only my personal opinion, that the Queen, the late Queen, I was lucky enough to meet, it was of a different era, Julia.
Yeah, it was.
And I think, you know, maybe, you know, times were different then, and she might have covered up for him, but I don't think, you know, hopefully the English public won't drag her out, and I don't believe that the Prince Charles should either. You know,
well, no, I think you say, I mean, no one's accusing the king of any wrongdoing there, you know, in terms of covering up, but there is just an element where I got the strong impression from the people I've spoken to that when he was Prince of Wales, he was basically begging the Queen to take action on Andrew and rein him in, and things weren't done. But there's no doubt at all there has been some level of cover up. There's, you know, there's Royal Protection Officers who would have been completely aware of where Prince Andrew was and who he was consorting with. This would have gone up, we're told by senior figures in the palace, would have gone up to the top levels of the palace, whether the late Queen knew, whatever, that this information was available to senior figures, would have been available to the Met Chief, etc., and no action was taken. And that is the concern.
It is the concern, and I understand that. But at least the king was quicker than Downing Street.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, I'm with you as well. I don't think you should be responsible for something that, you know, we're not living in, you know, the Soviet Union. You don't have guilt by association.
No, not at all. And there's one other thing, Julie. I must, you know, I listen to your radio station from 6 in the morning till 10 at night.
Oh,
I'm an HGV lorry driver. Yesterday, I listened to your Labour MP, maybe an hour and a half ago, and he spoke. You know, he was saying what happened last night at number 10, and he spoke with pure anger. You could feel, Julia, down the phone, the anger and the frustration in that gentleman's voice. Yeah. Now, yesterday, I listened all day to your radio, and I listened to Nigel Farage. What a difference in two men. The man an hour ago spoke with anger with Labour. Nigel Farage, yesterday afternoon, spoke with passion, with vigour, with his soul. He just, you know, I've never looked at politics until the last 2 years, and I didn't know what to do. But listening to him yesterday, I know where I'm going.
Yep.
He's getting my vote.
That's very interesting. And again, there is the whole thing about offering something positive. You can't offer just sort of, aren't the Tories awful, whether you're Labour or Reform or Independent. You have to offer something positive, a vision, a belief, a philosophy. There needs to be something there for people to go, I know I've got something tangible to vote for, whatever it is.
Everything that Nigel, as a 60-year-old man, everything he said yesterday, I was driving along, I was
nodding away.
Cheering. I was cheering.
Very interesting.
I want to hear this, Nigel. I'd love to meet him, but thank you for having me, Julia.
No, thanks for thank you so much for listening. I'm glad we're keeping you company on those long motorway drives. Andrew in Gloucester talking about, Nigel and his namesake, Andrew. Just Tom Slater, your reaction to, just in terms of what those gents had to say. Very much, I don't think there's any appetite for people to go after the late Queen, but I do think there is an issue in terms of, palace flunkies and, and a general, protecting of the firm.
No, absolutely. And whilst there isn't much appetite to go after the late Queen, as you say, I think it is a reminder that this institution was a lot weaker than maybe the monarchists would like to make out. That in many respects, when we saw the Queen passing and the funeral and all the sympathy and well wishes that erupted there, that was a bit of a high watermark because so much of it was invested in her as a figure, whereas that affection has not seamlessly transferred to Charles, and certainly the irrationality of the institution has been shown up by Prince Andrew, who could easily, if things had been different, ended up being on the throne himself. So this is a really difficult point in the monarchy's history, and I think that's just
They've
not
gone
just
through
because
a lot
of what's
of those
happened.
and survived them all.
We shall see.
OK, 12:35 is time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about a warning from MI5. No, not about links with Epstein, but about foreign spies, including from China, in our universities. We're going to talk to Professor Anthony Glees about that. Oh, yes, and the small matter of, some political parties not being allowed to take part in political debates and the like. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. We're going to change tack just for a little bit. Lots to talk about politics and indeed the royals and all these criminal investigations and God knows what, and recriminations against the Prime Minister. But let's talk about, an ongoing issue. Something we talk about so much on this show, and that is the threats from outside of this nation. Whether it's Russia, whether it's China, whether it's Islamist extremism, we are facing threats every single day. Well, MI5 have warned university leaders. More than 70 vice-chancellors of universities called to a meeting with the intelligence agency last week and told that foreign spies could be watching them and they need to improve their defences against Chinese coercion. They were told to report foreign interference, intimidation and censorship from hostile states, including, of course, China. Well, let's talk about this with Professor Anthony Gleeson, security and intelligence expert. A very good afternoon to you, Anthony.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I mean, I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to most people who've been paying attention, certainly not you.
Not at all. I mean, the Chinese problem in respect of our universities has been going on for more than a decade, and people like me have been warning universities to watch out. It's not just a question of students. It is also the Chinese interest in the research that goes on in our universities. And a recent case, a year or two ago, where Chinese actually paid for a British weapons expert at a famous British university to do research on our ballistic missile system, which was then passed on to China. Indeed, brilliant. The academic went to China to actually brief them about his research. So there'd been an extraordinary lapse. I'm not surprised Ken McCallum, whom I rate as Director General of MI5, has been warning these universities, the same MI5, of course, that allegedly told the Prime Minister they were very happy about the Chinese super embassy in London. We could
work around the difficulties there. But this is the thing. It's not the thing. It's talk about intimidation and menace. There is the issue of basically stealing commercial information. We know they do that in research. Stealing vital military or security information. But there's also the influencing, isn't there? The influencing of academic research, influencing of papers, influencing of academics and students. And a lot of that is done not with menace and intimidation. It's done with cold, hard cash in exactly the same way as Middle Eastern leaders are doing the same thing. Would you like a lovely new science block? Would you like a new science park? Would you like a lovely new building? Let's do this. We'll sponsor this particular chair, this professorship and the like. When they spend the money like that, that influences what research is done and who says what and who says and who does what, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are two big issues here. The first have to do with China's intentions towards the United Kingdom. And I am increasingly convinced that what China wants to do is to pull the United Kingdom into China's orbit, as it has done to many other European states, Greece in particular, but not only Greece. And it is part of a real plan they have that we should be part of them in the not too distant future. And the other, of course, are our universities. They're far too big, there are far too many of them, they're totally strapped for cash, and yet they feel they have to, rather than cut back and get rid of some of the bloating, they have to increase their student numbers come what may. And Chinese students bring 8 billion quid into British higher education. I mean, there are 140,000 plus Chinese students. And don't forget this, Julia, Chinese law says that every Chinese citizen is obliged to be a spy for China if required to do so. So you've got the research, the weapons research, you've got the vast numbers of students keeping universities that frankly should be allowed to die in peace, keeping them afloat, and then, as you say, intimidating lecturers who teach Chinese students things the Chinese government does not want. And I have had myself personal experience of this more than a decade ago. at Cambridge when I was invited to speak to Chinese officials coming to China. I told the university I wanted to talk about the importance of lawfulness in secret activity, that in this country we didn't like waterboarding and torture. And I was then uninvited because the Cambridge...
That controversial view?
They didn't want their Chinese students to hear things that they thought the Chinese students...
Well, at least you didn't deny climate change or misgender anyone, or your career would have been over, Anthony. Your career would be... I mean, let's face it, they ain't the only people who are a problem in university. The trans activists are also a big problem. No, I mean, and the climate change warriors. Again, there's a lot of... It's a very, very different world, I think, from when you were at university, when I was at university. The idea that you could challenge ideas, you can question things, that people would debate, and that has absolutely really, really changed. But again, this is very, very sinister and very, very dangerous. This is actually something that puts us at risk. I imagine there's a lot of recruitment that goes on as well. We've also got, again, huge numbers of high fee paying Chinese students arriving and studying medicine, and then we don't train enough of another subject, we don't train enough of our own people. And, you know, we do have a lot of different issues here. But a lot of this is about, as you say, influencing things, not just in our country, but on the world stage. Attitudes for China, attitudes towards the Uyghurs, Tibet, Taiwan. And we've seen this with, say, Qatar. And they board up everything they can. And the way that they use like Al Jazeera and the influence they have and the money that they spend in universities to... and the same with UAE in terms of affecting people's views on issues like Gaza and Israel. There is a lot going on, and we seem to be walking blind into this.
Well, blind, and as I say, we not only have given China a super embassy in Royal Mint Court in London from which to organise its spying activities in the UK and Europe. The MI5 say they can handle it. Clearly they can't, because we can't get prosecutions of people who are involved. And China gives us nothing. It's why I said, right at the start, Sir Keir Starmer's visit to China was actually a humiliation for the United Kingdom. Well, and look what's happened since then. Jimmy Lai is being sentenced effectively to life imprisonment, and he is a British national. So, I would come back, because I'm a professor, I'd naturally come back to the role played by our university. It's finally time that somebody stood up and told British universities that they either live within their means or they go under. Absolutely. And the idea that MI5 says to universities, you've got to be careful whom you admit. That's all ridiculous. As we see, they can't vet Peter Mandelson properly. How on earth are they going to vet 150,000 Chinese students?
I must ask you just about that. I wasn't going to, but actually, as a security intelligence expert, again, we are hopefully going to see, what information Keir Starmer had. What was in the public domain already? He shouldn't have appointed Mandelson. We know that. And he's admitted at PMQs last week that he did know that he was still in contact and close friends with Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction for a paedophile crime in America. What do you think that we are going to find out in terms of what MI5, MI6, whoever advised in terms of the vetting of Peter Mandelson?
Well, the whole thing, Julia, is extremely extraordinary, I have to say that. We are told by Sir Keir Starmer that the security services, he said this in Parliament, the security services vetted Mandelson after he was given a job. Now, most people aren't stupid, and they would assume the vetting comes first and then you get the job if it's okay. In Mandelson's case, it was the other way round. But Sir Keir very clearly blamed the vetting process. And that's complicated. We've got to see it. In my view, an appointment as important as that of British ambassador to the United States of America would not have gone through the common or garden vetting procedure, but would have had particularly attentive vetting from MI5, the security service. And if MI5 said Mandelson is okay, which I do not for one moment believe, but if they said it, we want a new Director General of MI5. However, I don't think they did say it.
It's either the Director of MI5, Director General of MI5, or it's the Prime Minister, because they can't both remain in their jobs at that point, can they?
They cannot, and I think. I understand why Sir Keir said, it's all the fault of the security service. We'll get the Intelligence and Security Committee to look at it, and in 5 years' time we'll know. But vetting is absolutely crucial. Security vetting for these top jobs is absolutely crucial.
But let's face it, I could have vetted him and said that he wasn't fit. Anthony Case, such a pleasure to. I'm going to have to let you go now, Professor Anthony, security and intelligence expert, covered a lot of ground there. Tom Slater, just your response. Just come back to the Chinese and the problem we've got in our universities.
No, it's been obvious for some time that we're very much exposed. It's not just the universities, obviously.
You've been writing about this stuff on Spiked for a long time.
No, absolutely. We've just completely left ourselves wide open to this. Not only has the university sector just become so overly reliant on Chinese students in particular, which can have its own problems, but also because of various institutes which are set up with Chinese money and pretty credible stories that has affected scholarship, people's ability to have academic freedom within those institutions. But you just go down the list, the super embassy, the fact that it wasn't that long ago that we were going to have Chinese tech within our 5G networks. I mean,
nuclear
plants, one thing after another. And of course, there's going to be opportunities for investment, cooperation, and so on and so forth. I'm not the sort of person who thinks that it's all or nothing.
I don't mind buying their cheap tat. But I don't think we should do more than that.
There is a level of willful naivety that has crept in to many of our institutions where the CCP is concerned, and you think, given their track record, why that has ever happened.
I don't think it's naivety. I think in all these stories, you come back to every single thing we talked about. It's always money that talks. Yeah. It's always money that talks. Can I just ask you just about one other story? This is related to university. The Bangor University Debating Society has banned Reform UK MP Sarah Pochin, she's the MP for Runcorn and Helsby, from speaking to students. They're debating and political society. I don't think they understand the notion of debating. They're almost as bad as the Oxford Union Society. They refused to host an event with Sarah Pochin, claiming it was keeping hate out of our universities. The university insisted it was politically neutral, supports freedom of speech, and had no role in society's decision. But there is a requirement in the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act. So it does exactly what it says on the tin. The universities are required to promote the importance of free speech. But I mean, we're talking about an elected MP, which is a democratic elected MP, being refused to basically speak at an event in a debating and political society university. The only response to that, to me, is every single person who made that decision is thrown out of the university for being utterly, well, that's the society closed down. You're either debating society or not.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly shows that they're unfit to run a politics and debating society, where if you're not the right kind of politician, then they don't want to debate you.
But what you're debating if you just all have to agree with each other?
Does make it. I mean, we all know this culture of intolerance and censorship has existed for a very long time. Obviously, I think in this case, Reform approached them and said, we would like to host the event. So there is a question of free association here. Should student societies be able to book their own events, so on and so forth. But it shows a culture that is not going away within those universities.
Whether it's women who don't think that men can become women, and women who don't have penises, things like that. I mean, like they're not, people who don't think that the world is going to end in the next half an hour because of climate change. They don't want to hear from anybody unless they agree with them. It's just utterly
They only want to hear from other insane people like themselves. That's essentially what universities are now.
Again, if you cannot debate someone who disagrees with you and rely on the fact that you've got the strongest arguments and the facts on your side, maybe you don't have a very strong argument. By the way, talking of which, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, he did say in the last half an hour or so that he did support the Prime Minister. Studiously quiet for the last few days. But he's also called for stability across the Labour Party, and speaking at an event just now for the Resolution Foundation, he said, "I have never said Britain should ignore the bond markets or even blame them." He said that the government shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets. He says, "I've never said Britain should ignore the bond markets or even blame them. What I do say is that it is the decisions of politicians from the 1980s onwards that have left us in hock to them with little headroom and room for manoeuvre." I'm pretty sure he's on tape saying shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets, but we'll leave it there. We're going to go to a quick break. Then we're going to be talking not about what happens at university, we're going to be talking about what happens to our kids who are much younger than that, teenagers at school, and the social media they see, and why within minutes of logging in to social media, actually opening their first account, they're already seeing harmful content. Who's responsible for that, and what do we do about it? That's up next. This is Talk.
union block vote will be a huge constituent part of who gets elected. Also, the Labour membership will be further to the left even than the Labour Parliamentary Party. I think all roads lead to Rayner. Now, she's got some tax issues to deal with and sort out, but if she gets that out of the way, I would have thought that it's hers to lose.
Will the country be better or worse without Starmer? I mean, you're saying Rayner might be there, Ed Miliband potentially. Is it going to be a brighter future without him, or is it going to be even worse?
Things can only get worse.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:53 is the time. Let's talk right now about, well, once again, social media and the harmful content that's being fed to us, not just adults, but also to kids. And yes, kids who at the age they are allowed to look at it. Teenagers as young as 15 joining Instagram, joining TikTok, could be shown racist, misogynistic or violent content, basically without searching for it, without consenting to it, basically within minutes of setting up their account. So they're not looking for it, but the algorithm is sending it straight to them. So what do we do about this? Chris McGovern is on the line. He's chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Very good afternoon to you, Chris.
Hello there.
Thanks for joining us. Look, there's been such a debate lately about whether or not we go down the Australian route, and I think Spain and other countries looking at it, of basically banning social media for under 16-year-olds. That would deal with this, but I'm not sure I want a 16-year-old to be fed this stuff. Is the problem who gets to look at this stuff, or is the problem the actual social media algorithms themselves?
Well, it's certainly the algorithms. And what's happening here, Julia, is that the Online Safety Act is supposed to stop this, but they are leaving it to the tech companies to monitor it. So they have to decide what is obnoxious, toxic material, and what isn't. And they're obviously not properly doing their job. So the Online Safety Act isn't actually fully working. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you know, the high-tech bosses in California, they send their own kids to low-tech schools.
Oh,
and
yes.
They give their own kids a low-tech environment, Bill Gates and so on. They look after their own kids. They don't expose them to this at all. So the act isn't working, very, very sadly. It's not working.
Well, my worry about the Online Safety Act was it would go too far and it would restrict other people. And there's a big issue of people not being able to see some political content online because it's being restricted. I don't trust the tech companies, or indeed my government or any other government, to decide what I can and can't see. Equally, at the same time, I don't want it. I mean, sometimes when I'm looking at, X is the only social media feed I spend a lot of time on, and every now and then something very sexual and very explicit will pop up. I certainly don't want to see, absolutely a violent content or sexual content, but I'll get it anyway. You have to be very careful with your feeds, but certainly the damage that can do to young minds. I mean, there was one teenager within 8 minutes of opening a TikTok account. By the way, we're coming back to China here. They own TikTok. Was shown a violent video of a man drugging and kidnapping a woman within 8 minutes. No, so it's not like based on their previous searches. So we've seen, the kids who are pushed into, anorexia accounts, bulimia accounts, self-harm. We've seen the rise of trans very much on social media, telling girls and boys that this is the solution to all their problems. There is a very big issue here, isn't there? But who do we trust to deal with it?
Well, we don't trust the government for sure. But between the devil and the deep blue sea here, because look, I'm one of the proponents of freedom of speech, but of course, I don't want children to have the freedom to view or to be directed towards this toxic content.
No.
I mean, I would probably go much further than yourself, as you know, probably from a previous interview, that I would actually apply the same laws to the purchase of smartphones that we apply to the purchase of alcohol. So, yes, of course, we know people say, oh, that's really hard because you can't do that. You're never going to get around that. Well, we don't, we ban murder. Well, there's still murder.
Yes, exactly.
If we had a ban on the purchase of smartphones, very, very difficult. But because it's so difficult, we should lead the world on this, because it is actually corrupting our young people. It's devastating for these young people. But we do want to protect free speech. So just if you apply the same laws to the purchase of smartphones as we apply to the purchase of alcohol. It doesn't work but it will work in many cases. It doesn't work all the time.
Interesting.
It works some of the time.
Chris McGovern, thank you for that. Chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. So it's short but sweet. Appreciate you joining us, Chris. Very briefly, Tom Slater. I know you and I are both free speech advocates. You're more of a full-on absolutist than me. But
I blame the parents. Why are we legislating for this? Just don't give them, hundreds of pounds worth of technology kit in the first place.
Because 15-year-olds have. I mean, my daughter was have my old phone. I've never bought her a new phone. She just has my old one.
No, not having it. We don't need the laws. We just need people to step up.
What about the parents who don't step up? But it's about the algorithms. Your kid needs to be able to. Your kid needs to be able to do. Use Google Maps to find their way to be safe when they're midnight.
What's wrong with an A to Z, Julia? Bring back the A to Z.
I think you're being facetious. I think it's perfectly reasonable. Teenagers do have these phones, but I just think the algorithms are part of the problem, and I really do think we need to be holding these people to account. Why is any of this? Why is there anything violent on a social media feed?
It is strange.
Why is anyone putting violent sexual content on social media feeds? Can we not just ban that?
Clear-cut criminal material as well, just always floating around there.
I don't see why that's necessary. But there we are. We live in a world where someone decided to ask to see me in a bikini on Grok.